You heard Klausy McSchwab's first 2 records.
Vaccines back, all right. You know nothing and be happy.
But this one is gonna make your modified mRNA tingle. Time Lies presents Greatest Schwabs, Volume 15. A New World Order in Music.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All the unvaccinated are still alive. A little bit of Pfizer in my arm. A little bit of BioNTech does no harm. A little Johnson Johnson does the trick. A little AstraZeneca so you don't get sick. It's booster number 5. Let's talk about Vax, baby. Let's talk about Doc Fauci. Let's talk about all the weird and countless side effects, maybe. Let's talk about Vax. Let's talk about Vax a little. Come and take the 7th shot, the 7th shot. With a little luck you get my, oh! Myocarditis. You won't have to be rich. With CBDC, you'll have all you need with central currency. We just take your extra wealth and your cash. And you can walk 500 steps, but not a single step more until the curfew activates and robot cops stand at your door. Just a small town boy drinking genetically modified soy. This ensures he doesn't procreate. Please stop bleeding.
Stop the bleeding.
We are almost 9 billion people. Please stop bleeding right now. We didn't start the Pfizer. We just made you take it even if you hate it.
Greatest Schwabs, Volume 15. Now available on Spotify and MRN Apple Music.
All the caterpillar tastes like chicken in wine. And mealworm tastes just like a steak. Ain't nothing better than a deep-fried butterfly or centipede protein shake. Be sure to check the Cricket McNuggets out. They're almost as crunchy as worms. And chew your great grasshopper sandwich extra loud. 'Cause this is all you get. I don't care who you are, where you're from, don't care what you want, you will eat the bugs.
So Willie has what I need. I ordered Willie magazine.
The new Willie means fun and Schwerble.
The media has recently spoken out about X and social media, saying that misinformation and lies are being spread all over the internet, with the CEO of the media releasing a statement saying that they are, quote, not happy to see people going over to X to get their lies when we have perfectly good lies over here. I know the lies on the internet are the new shiny thing and may look appealing, but there is no reason for people to look elsewhere when our lies are safe, consistent, grade A, socially acceptable, vetted lies, and you don't have to worry about what's in them.
Veteran WAPO journalist Brad Levin said, these new lies the kids are watching now aren't even agreed upon by the community to make sure they are pure. Listen, I understood if you just weren't looking for lies at all, but to just start looking elsewhere when our lies are clearly the industry standard makes no sense. Some of these new guys have been lying for 2-3 years tops when we have decades of lying under our belt. Hey, if you want to take a chance with some off-brand knockoff lies, just know you are doing so at your own peril. But don't actually, though, please. I'm telling you we're a solid provider and you don't need to go shopping around.
When asked to comment on the trust in media being at record lows, the head of media said, "Data has shown our trust is higher than ever. See how I did that with a straight face? That's the kind of stuff you get over here with us. Believable. In fact, some of our news has been referred to as can't believe it's not true. Professional, homegrown American lies from a guy in a suit, not some bozo with a smartphone who, heaven forbid, might even be Russian. I get that people might want to mess around with some off-brand stuff here and there when Coke and Pepsi aren't on the menu. But when it comes to lies, they are on the menu, and it's time for you to take a sip."
Twitter user Pureblood Patriot 5 has accused the media of foul play as 3 men in suits showed up to his basement and demanded 20% of all revenue earned through published materials that turned out years later to be false, saying they told him, quote, "If you want to tell lies on our turf, that's fine, but you gotta pay the VIG. No free lunches out here, capiche? And it would be a shame if he had to get put on a hate list that had him demonetized." They then proceeded to spit on his computer and strongly encouraged him to play ball while tapping a photo of Jonathan Greenblatt.
Welcome to the Independent Review, a weekly podcast where we bring you the latest from the world of independent journalism. Whether you're a news junkie, a curious learner, or just looking for a fresh perspective away from the corporate media, this is the show for you. So join us now as we dive into the world of independent journalism on the Independent Review.
Welcome to the Independent Review. Today we have clips from the Indie News Network, the Convo Couch, Abby Martin, AM Wakeup, Charlie Robinson, and much more. Let's go to our first clip from the Indie News Network.
Who are these people?
While everyone was talking about Israel and Palestine, and while you weren't looking, right behind your backs, Europe just approved the new digital identity that's coming your way, sponsored by who else? By the guy himself, Bill Gates. You got our man. Bill Gates' digital IDs will be mandatory to participate in society.
This is, I mean, let's be real. We all knew this was coming.
We all saw these coming. And
like,
what other perfect time than during like a massive regional war, right?
Well, there's two schools of thought, right? There's the thought of like, is all of this a distraction to hide this? Or there's the other school of thought insofar as let's wait until there's a shitstorm and that's when we move forward with all this other stuff. Like there's two ways. There's, at least I'm a little torn on, like, there's two ways to go about it. But yeah, they've been floating the shit out for a while now. It's I was just waiting for the other shoe to drop, and I guess a whole box of shoes dropped at the same time or something.
This is it, baby. Something's big coming. Something big is coming. I don't know what it is in particular, but this doesn't look good.
Digital public goods are instruments in an economy that allow connectivity, that allow transparency, and allow people to work together collectively to achieve a certain set of goals, whether they are the sustainable development goals or simply the growth goals of an economy.
So digital public goods are open source digital building blocks which can be used to fast track the achievement of our sustainable development goals. I think this is a remarkable movement, and at the heart of the DPG movement is the idea of openness, interoperability, and sharing, so that different organizations, countries, entities don't have to reinvent the wheel, but can benefit off and build on top of what already exists, thereby simplifying, fast-tracking the achievement of the sustainable development goals that are very dear to us.
Just a warning, if it's sustainable, that's usually not a good word. Like, usually sustainable actually means a very bad thing.
That's their new buzzword.
That's the corporate buzzword for this is a really evil thing we're going to cover up as a good thing.
Open source software, open standards, open data were built by communities of contributors that did create and govern those resources. And the benefits are enormous because First, it did launch this movement of innovation, this digital revolution, and it did empower the people because no one can expropriate you, nor change the price, nor take the control, because you cannot build a monopoly on what we call in France digital commons.
But what it means to be a digital public good is that no one owns them. They're available, freely available to all to use, and they are shareable. And this is why it's so important, because what we see is that countries around the world are trying to solve the same problems. And if others have already developed a solution and made that openly available to everybody, then they can grab that and use it for their own purposes, solve their own problems. And this is why we're so excited about this, because they become building blocks for countries to work on their digital public infrastructures.
For these goods to operate successfully and optimally, you do need the digital public infrastructure as well. Digital public infrastructure, in fact, is the one thing that assures interoperability and smooth functioning of an economy. When you take, for example, what has been happening in Ukraine and how the government in the...
This whole thing's a fucking... The masks, the cyborgs, the Ukraine. Do you get it now? Does anyone get it?
I think they're just like seeing how many psyops they can fit into like one sound clip at this point. Just like we got the... Watch at the end just be like, now... It'll never be easier for you to condemn Hamas. Like, they're just gonna fucking just all of it at once. God damn it.
Run a war situation has used digitalization and digital governance to actually run their country.
Yeah, we actually have a video on the DPI app, the app that Ukraine has. That they literally have like an app. It's like a drone game. That part of it is like they have like a drone game on this like this DARPA app. It's like a UN thing that like all the citizens have, and it's like a digital ID, and like you shoot like Russian tanks with drone strikes. It's crazy, but
like
it shows you
as in like it's just like a game app like Fruit Ninja and shit.
Yeah, like a Fruit Ninja, except you kill Russians with it.
Dude, they're secretly...
That's how propagandized they are.
That's linked to the social credit score. If they don't nuke us...
They already have it.
If they don't
nuke in Ukraine, they're like the templates for the rest of the world. I'm telling you now. Like they're where the... And Maui, like all the disaster zones, that's where you're going to get the FEMA camps, the 15-minute cities, all of the stuff that need help, to stimulate the economy. That's going to come from... the guys like Bill Gates. I just finished his video.
How digital public infrastructures make a difference to growth, to sustainability, sometimes even just for survival.
So that's it. They're going to make it sound like actually they are. They're saying that it's mandatory. It's literally in order to participate in society. This is what you have to be a part of this. At least in Europe. It's not here in the West for now.
Dude, I can't wait to get called like anti-science or they might just use anti-vax. I don't fucking know. We're just recycling all the propaganda these days.
Anti-app? What are they going to call you now? Like anti-DPI?
I'm going with something like anti-science. Maybe they'll like start calling people Luddites or like
anti-cyborg or anti-digital, like cyborg racist or something, like racist towards cyborgs.
Transhuman phobic. That might be one.
That's it. That's going to be the next one.
Transhuman.
That's the pipeline.
Cyborg.
Corbett has a video on that.
There's one thing I know for sure. They have already cooked up what they're going to fucking call people when they complain about this. That's the one thing I know. They've already figured out what they're going to call people, the out group they're going to put them in, and all the talking points they have to make them feel really bad about not getting on board this 50 Shades of Black Mirror.
Yes.
God damn it. They even warned us. That shit was predictive programming, that one episode.
Oh, yeah.
We're like
several times.
Your actual standing in society went down as like
the 50 million credits. That one's a scary one.
That's a scary one because everybody I knew said the same thing. They were like, can anyone else see that happening really soon? And I'm like, it's going to happen. And of course, I was a conspiracy theorist for that, but joke's on you, various family members and friends.
On November 8th, 2023, right last week, right when you weren't watching, a virtual launch event took place that was termed the 50 and 5 agenda. The 50 and 5 agenda. The United Nations, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and partners of the Rockefeller Foundation, I couldn't think of a better group, honestly, are launching a campaign to accelerate a digital ID, digital payments, and data sharing rollouts in 50 countries under the umbrella of digital public infrastructure by 2028. This is coming to you. The United Nations Development Program has announced plans to roll out digital IDs that will be worldwide by the year 2030, and they will be mandatory for people who wish to participate in society, say Reclaim the Net, who advocate for free speech and liberty online.
Hey, so does everybody remember those vaccine passports? That whole apparatus there. That whole apparatus there. Yeah, just a quick like UI tweak there, and we're good to go again. Just hope y'all kind of saw what that was.
I just really hope people see like where the pipeline is, because this is where it is, the social credit system. The push for digital public infrastructure, which includes digital IDs, vaccine passports, and central bank currencies, which is CBDCs, is being championed by the globalists, WEF, and unsurprisingly is backed by Bill Gates along with the UN, European Union. Sociable editor Tim Henchcliffe says advocates are adamant that DPI is essential for participation in markets and society, just like we saw with vaccine passports, only on a much broader scope. And if successful, DPI will give governments and corporations the power to implement systems of social credit that can determine where and how you can travel, what are you allowed to consume, and how are you able to transact with your programmable money, and also how you travel. That's a big one. Like travel, out of all of your rights, your right to travel should be your number one, and they're going to take that away. That's
no running away. No expat shit, y'all. And yeah, up here in Canada, for those who don't remember that, with the whole COVID thing, there was no escaping at one point. Nobody, unless you got the jab, you could not go fucking.
I got the jab. I got the jab because, frankly, I mean, I was actually going to Europe that summer, so I was like, I don't want problems. I know people who got like hassled at the Berlin airport or somewhere in Germany, but like they took it really seriously over there.
Yeah.
But look, this is where it all comes from. It all comes under this umbrella of the carbon footprint trackers, the ultra low emission zones. This is all where it comes from. This is all it is. It's the 50 and 5 builds itself as a country-led advocacy campaign. So 50 countries, the DPI is first in Africa and India, and the plan, there's several different outlets backing reporting this, and then of course there's an entire stream that you can watch, but we're not going to sit through the whole thing. But Rockefeller, Bill and Melinda Gates, all of the family right here.
It's almost like they asked them, like, "Hey, what do you guys want to do for digital IDs? Why don't we make it like the most bourgeois collaboration ever, to the point where it's offensive? Where we're just like, yeah, these are all the most powerful dragons in the world. We're gonna come together to say, go fuck yourself. We want to know what kind of shit you're talking on the bird app."
And everything that you're buying, everywhere that you're going, this is everything in one spot. You're into your name, your face, and it's all like. So I just find it like I find it interesting, the timing, because like they use the year like 2030 a lot, and also I think there's like a sense among the elites that like this shit is like kind of going down, and that like there's always some good money in a collapse. So when you have a world war coming, for instance, perhaps you could use a lot of that devastation and collapse to your own financial benefit. And that's kind of what this is. That's what Europe is doing, at least. That this is 50 countries in the UN. So
yeah, my take is basically that, like, I think the rich and powerful kind of realize, like, if they don't clamp down soon, like they're just gonna completely lose the fucking plot. Like,
they've already lost the plot. They're
not gonna be
scrambling.
able-
It's so like Israel, like they're losing the PR game so bad that like that now you have like now like and this is a pattern. Like you like called this out as well. How there's like sort of there's this recognition of like here we have Ursula von der Leyen calling for a European digital identity. Same thing. Okay, let's watch this. Mrs. Van der Leyen, famous, number one Ukraine.
Jedes Mal, wenn eine Website uns auffordert, eine neue digitale Identität zu erstellen oder uns bequem über eine große Plattform anzumelden, haben wir in Wirklichkeit keine Ahnung, was eigentlich mit unseren Daten passiert. Und aus diesem Grund wird die Kommission demnächst eine sichere europäische digitale Identität vorschlagen. Eine, der wir vertrauen.
I hate this bitch so much.
I do too, and I'm pretty sure she's Klaus Schwab in drag.
She's a Nazi. She's got to be a Nazi.
Bürgerinnen und Bürger überall in Europa nutzen können, um alles zu tun. Vom Steuerzahlen bis zum Fahrradmieten.
Everything.
Eine Technologie, bei der wir selbst kontrollieren können, welche Daten ausgetauscht und wie sie verwendet werden.
How they want it.
That's it too. They want, like, they have to do a big clampdown soon before they completely lose control. And what better way than to link everything you need to function as a person together? Oh, you want to spend some money? Well, guess what? They got a hold on that. You want to do a little free speech? Well, guess what? Now they can monitor that, and you will be punished for it. And guess what? They also have control of your money. They're trying to clamp everything down so there's nowhere left to go. It's a lot of people might find this to be a huge black pill, but I almost find it comical insofar as, like, the desperate is just palpable. It's palpable.
So how long were we were saying this is 2020 with the vaccine passport, so this is like years of shouting and warning down the line, and no one listens. No one listens because again, like, I feel like conspiracy theorist is just a derogatory like term for like a truth person, like person who just wants to know just what's actually happening. We live in a conspiratorial world. Like that's just a reality.
Yeah, I mean, like, here's the thing. The term may have had like a little bit of weight before. It used to have a fair bit of weight. Now it's done.
It's
people have heard that about so many things that turned out to be true in a period of like 2 to 3 years that it's like it's a joke. When you see Russell Brand makes it a joke now. When you see popular people joking about it because of how silly it is, it's like, you're done. I'm sorry. The conspiracy theory thing doesn't work anymore. You're going to have to just outright gaslight someone now and just say, like, no, you're lying. It's not true. You're crazy.
That's what they're at.
Or you're just going to have to say, you know what? Too bad. Yeah, we are doing that. Yeah, we are putting we are putting mechanical tadpoles in your water. Yeah.
We're going to stick a chip inside you. Yes.
We're going to stick a chip inside you, and if you don't like it, then you don't get to be part of the super cool kids club or whatever the fuck. Translation, you're not allowed in our 15-minute cities. They probably have figured all of this out.
They have it all planned out. She's probably a part of. She probably has intelligence. She worked for the military. I'm pretty sure.
And
listen to this. This is another crazy bitch. Listen to this one.
When I get into office, the first thing we have to do, social media accounts, social media companies, they have to show America their algorithms. Let us see why they're pushing what they're pushing. The second thing is every person on social media should be verified by their name. That's, first of all, it's a national security threat. When you do that, all of a sudden people have to stand by what they say, and it gets rid of the Russian bots, the Iranian bots, and the Chinese bots. And then you're going to get some...
All three. That's so great. The Iranian bots. There's Iranian bots now. Holy fucking shit.
And China bots. No word about NAFO. No word about the Israeli bot. Nothing.
No.
Nothing.
And I think that's deliberate because
it's the axis of evil.
I think that's deliberate because she probably knows they're the same employees doing all of these various fucking NAFO 1 week. Hey, Paul, can you do some IDF shit next week? We're swamped here. They're telling the truth too much.
They take shifts. They're like, okay, you got to do Ukraine this week.
Yeah.
I'm on the Israel shift, but
dude, I'm still gaslighting people over lockdowns. I can't do that this week.
Oh shit.
We only have 3 of us left, and we're all depressed and alcoholic because of it.
She's on something.
Civility, when people know their name is next to what they say,
accountability,
and they know their pastor and their family member is going to see it, it's going to help our kids and it's going to help our country.
Yeah.
She has the stare of a very distressed android. I don't know how else to describe it.
She's not happy. If you think that maybe money does get you happiness. It probably does. But I wouldn't know because I don't have any. But I'm kidding. I have enough, but not enough. Not MIC money.
My parents were pretty well to do and they were miserable. If it helps.
Yeah, I know. Like it's not fun being not in a wealthy position, but anywhere you work. But man. Nikki Haley is a monster of her own. She's a betrayal to humanity, I think. Like really, like she's like she represents like a satanic sort of like figure. This is the first one to say like finish Gaza, destroy them into pieces.
Yeah. I mean, I'm being completely sincere when I say I don't envy any of these people. I don't care if it means I have billions and billions of dollars. I don't envy any of these people.
There's no reason.
You're cognizant enough to realize like you're part of the problem, and you can cope all day long, and you can have zero fucking empathy. But at the end of the day, just because you have zero empathy doesn't mean you automatically don't feel shame. It doesn't.
They have to live in a morally bankrupt like perspective. That's the only way.
Not just that, even from their own like worldview, even from their own ideology, it's like, fuck, man. The only way I could make it in this world, the only way I could make all this money and get my android riddled face on TV, the only way I could do any of this was to be just a professional sociopath. That's like I would be miserable every second of my fucking life. You wake up, you look in the mirror, and you're like, yep, babies are dead, and it's partially my fault. Okay, take the Valium, let's go. Like,
that's how we're living nowadays. Oh, there's a genocide going on. Well, just another day at work. Like that's how Americans are living right now. That's like, oh, Holocaust again? No, just another day, just another Tuesday.
Oh, another day, another step closer to nuclear oblivion across the entire world. Cool.
Yeah, and like a technological 2030. Mark your calendar, folks. This is way closer than you think, and the technology is way watch this because the technology is way closer than you think. We're like 2 steps away from the chip. Watch.
Main AI Pin. It's a standalone device and software platform built from the ground up for AI. Engagement comes through your voice, touch, gesture, the laser ink display. Play the song How Music Makes You Feel Better. Weather, the date, how much protein?
These almonds have 15 grams of protein.
How much is this online?
This is $28 online.
Tap. staying in the moment, and generating a gorgeous image. Main AI pin.
That's it, folks.
Right next to your heart too. God damn. God
We're
damn.
here. We're
It's
here.
gonna be a lot of sudden deaths.
It's gonna be a long ride.
That's yeah, that's terrifying. The fucked up thing though is that does that even seem like a good sell? Like, how is that making your life
It's
more?
probably to be expensive too.
You're
honestly.
asking, what are you like? I have almonds in my hand. Can you tell me how much protein in these almonds?
How many protein? Who's tracking their protein right now?
First off, why
maybe
don't
their
you?
calories? I get that, but like protein, like
First
who's
off,
tracking macronutrients?
I'm sorry. I just want everybody to go through a little bit of a thought experiment here, okay? To take those almonds and put it in his hand, he had to take them probably out of a package. And the cool thing is, if you look at the side of the package, it tells you how much fucking protein's in it. This is the worst thing anybody's fucking thought up. What the hell, man? Man, I'm. You know
They're
what I'm
gonna
going to do
force you
today?
into this.
I'm
It's
gonna
mandatory.
I'm going to be so productive today. I'm going to take random food out of its packaging, throw the nutritional ingredients away, and then ask the heart robot thing to tell me how much protein's in these fucking almonds. Guys, at least come up with better shit than that, please. You are pissing in our mouths here.
You'll have Google Maps. Like, come on.
We already have Alexa. We can already be like, "Hey, phone, what is this thing?" And it's like, "It's this thing." You don't have to attach Alexa to your fucking heart.
No, they want to put it. They want to attach Alexa. They want to put a chip version of Alexa in your brain, and that's what they want.
Yeah,
and
they're gonna be like, "Don't worry, folks. We tested this out for 6 months. If you don't like it, you're transhuman phobic."
Transhuman phobic.
Here's Neil deGrasse Tyson to tell you why this is really important that you track the protein outside of your packaging. I don't fucking know. This is so dumb.
Keep an eye out, folks. Keep an eye out, folks. It's coming. 2030.
I just like a word with the fucking PR team. This is just dog shit. I can make a better example. Like, okay, maybe like you're out with your little boy Timmy and you catch a fish and you're like, shit, I don't have a weight for this fish. Maybe you can be like, hey, heart robot, or hey, brain robot, how much does this fish weigh? That's see right there. That's a better example than how much is this product that I have the information to right here. Like, you know, it's
or
just,
like it would be nice if Google could automatically update their search engine so that like when things are closed for permanently and they still show up on Google listings that they're not there anymore and don't show if they're open.
I mean, how about instead of moving forward with this crazy dystopian bullshit, we just work on the bullshit we got right now?
Yeah, there's a lot of shit that I'm complaining about that I would like to be fixed. Like Twitter's really sucks right now. It's not
just that. ChatGPT just fucking, I don't know how else to say it. It just bullshit shit.
It's
just
so
lies.
much, it's like a bullshit engine. That's all
just
it is.
Makes stuff up. And I've got to fact check the ChatGPT, which is why I stopped using it, because I'm like, okay, the only thing I'm doing here is I'm using ChatGPT for information, but then I'm going and finding the information anyway to make sure that the AI isn't lying to me. So why don't I just go find the fucking information? Probably like a nice, like, cut out the middleman situation.
It's just adding more steps. Just more steps.
That's what all this feels like. It's like, oh, now we've got this nice digital money. Yeah, but we've already got money. So, I mean, fucking, that's fine, I guess. Oh, you want digital IDs? We already have IDs, though. So
we have passports and licenses.
Yeah, this is what people need to think about. Like, okay, but why? Why do we need these things that we already have things for? Unless you, why do you need it hooked up to something that you can flick a switch next to?
People already have the chips where they're paying for stuff. You've seen those videos.
Dude, I can't wait. I just can't wait for all those like Twitter bots that are going to be like, just got chipped. They've got like the little chip in their
It's like
fucking.
my first Instagram post with the chip. Hey guys.
It's going to be, they're going to have like a little like save icon or something in their in their Twitter bio. They're just going to be like, just got chipped. I feel amazing.
I'm chipped.
Now we have a clip from the Convo Couch with Ryan Christian, Fiorella Isabel, and Craig Pasta.
Were you talking about RFK Jr. being the what it like? Is that like people thought it was good?
Let's get
now
to the video.
Yeah, let's get to it.
Let's get to the video. We'll get your opinions before you exit stage left. And fam, do you want to set this up in any way, shape, or form? I think your tweet went viral. You had 1 million plus watching or viewing it, but I think we should just play it and then jump right into it.
Let's just play the video. Yeah.
Let's play it full screen, cheese slice, and then we'll go from there.
Oh yeah.
And Israel is critical, and the reason it's critical is because
Volume up.
Work for us in the Mideast. It's almost like having an aircraft carrier in the Mideast. It's our oldest ally. It's been our ally for 75 years. And Israel is critical. And the reason it's critical is because it's a bulwark for us in the Mideast. It's almost like having an aircraft carrier in the Mideast. It's our oldest ally. It's been our ally for 75 years. It has been an incredible ally for us in terms of the technology, the exchange. And, in building the Iron Dome, which we paid a lot for, has also taught us enormously about how to defend ourselves at home from missiles. So those military expenditures are all going, 75% of it goes to U.S. companies under the agreement, under the MOU. But if you look at what's happening in the Mideast now, Iran is now the closest allies to Iran are Russia and China. Iran also controls all of Venezuela's oil. Hezbollah is in Venezuela. They have propped up the Maduro regime, and so they control that oil supply. BRICS, Saudi Arabia is now joining BRICS. So those countries will control 90% of the oil in the world. If Israel disappears, the vacuum in the Mideast, which is, Israel is our ambassador, it's our presence, our beachhead in the Mideast, and it gives us ears and eyes in the Mideast. It gives us intelligence. It gives us the capacity to influence affairs in the Mideast. If Israel disappeared, Russia and China would be controlling the Mideast, and they control 90% of the world's oil supply, and that would be cataclysmic for U.S. national security. So that's the answer to you.
So, main takeaway, that means we overlook anything bad Israel does because we need them for what we just described. I mean, that's what that means, right? I mean, they explain the strategic and political interests of why this partnership exists. Okay, well, so what you're saying is that's the important thing. It's sort of like when Trump was talking about Saudi Arabia, whatever, with the oil, they let you see that we ignore that they're an open authoritarian dictatorship because we need their oil. It's just so that's why I think that's been framed as him saying the quiet part out loud, right? It's just, that's embarrassing.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, I haven't seen a better, more honest summation of what the United States does and why Israel is such an important asset to the United States. Thank you, RFK Jr., for really saying what a lot of us have been saying for a very long time and been told that, we're being ridiculous or we're crazy, alt-right or alt-left or whatever, fringe, whatever, because this is exactly why Israel has the importance. This is why Israel gets billions of dollars every year. This is why Israel has such a great democracy, why they have such great healthcare, why the American people, are losing such normalcy in their lives in terms of the economy, in terms of the jobs, in terms of housing, in terms of just like the chaos that ensues our domestic policy. But Israel gets all the attention in the same way, of course, that we want to make Ukraine, in the same way we've attempted to use Taiwan. It's the same thing. But Israel, I believe, is at another level, because Israel has said from the beginning that they want to expand into Syria, into Lebanon. They want to expand into the Middle East. And what better way for the United States interests to expand into these regions without them having to lose, troops, to lose as much money and actually invest in a full-on war than using Israel as a proxy. So what we're seeing here is a replaying of the same type of strategy that the U.S. State Department does. But Kennedy, Pasta, I'm sorry, but I mean, this is exactly why Israel-Palestine wasn't just one conflict. When people were defending RFK, this was going to spew into his rhetoric on Iran. He talked about Venezuela, the Maduro regime. He uses these same very imperialist neocon talking points that have been used by the likes of George W. Bush, Barack Obama, McCain. I mean, I could go on and on. What is different? He's supposed to be the anti-war candidate, and here he is telling us exactly why we need to support Israel.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Let me address something really quickly, Ryan, because I know you pasta eat crow, LOL. And Don made the point about he's getting out before he gets, pie in the eye or whatnot. And the only thing that would be complete right now if Steve was in here going, "I told you so, pasta," that would just be mud in the face. But listen, I talked about this yesterday and on Jimmy's show, and I've talked about this before. For some of us who feel differently than Fiorella, as far as participating in electoral politics, and some of us are still going to participate in it for whatever reasons, I still think we were right at the time with the information we had. Because this is, like you said, now he's saying...
Scott Adams.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Good.
Thanks, bastard. But here's what I'm saying.
That was good.
When people had said, Papasta, you were the one who went and asked him this, and you exposed him this, so you feeling the way you feel, why would you take that position? Because had he taken the position after October 7th, where he can say, look, I feel Israel has a right to exist. They feel a right to defend themselves, but we must have calmer heads. We should call for a ceasefire immediately. We shouldn't have the bombing of civilians right now, and not said all this crap right here, which is the first time he said any of this stuff, because he had been talking about, we have to take on China in an economical way, right? Like, which to me says we're no longer going to saber rattle with them. And he had mentioned they have one base in Djibouti while we have 800 bases. So, and I'm not providing cover for my wrong decision over here right now, because people are saying, well, Pasta, why can't, there's people still reaching out to me that are still on the RFK bandwagon going, why can't you do it? I'm like, because, Fiorella was right in one way. You can't be the peace candidate if you are going to be pro-Israel, if you are going to condone what they want, because this thing can spin right out of control into World War III. You were the candidate who came to us and said, Ukraine and Russia can sprint into World War III. We can't do that. But this situation could do the same, especially with the relationship that Israel has with Iran, especially with the way that the United States is seeming to use this excuse, this crisis, is to get into a war with Iran. This could spin into World War III. So you can't be the peace candidate when you take that point of view. Also, too, as well, when you're going to be the anti-censorship candidate, when you're going to be the freedom of speech candidate, and he also took his position on censoring students at universities. This whole thought process that from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free is an anti-Semitic term that wants to call for the wiping out of Israel and killing of their citizens is just ridiculous. There's an actual concentration camp in their country, ladies and gentlemen. They want to be free on what was Palestine before 1948. That's what it means. And it's ridiculous that people are saying that. So with Kennedy being not only the anti-peace candidate now, because he can't be for pro-peace with this position, he's also the censorship candidate now. He can't be against censorship with the position he's taken. That's why it's okay for me to go, Azalut, have a good time, bye-bye. And I do want to make one more simple point before I hand this over right now, too, as well, because I do have a Give, Send, Go out there where I've collected money to go and cover RFK. I'm going to change the title and take away that once-in-a-lifetime candidate, because he's not a once-in-a-lifetime candidate. He's shown us his true colors. Yes, Fee, you were right. But I'm still going to cover him. And boy, you better believe, just like that question was a hard question, there's many more questions to come. RFK, sir, I will be seeing you. You will not be getting away from me. So don't worry, ladies and gentlemen. I will still be covering his campaign. And boy, it's not going to be a cakewalk, my friends. Go ahead, Ryan.
Wait.
Thank you very much for putting that up, by the way, Jamie.
Yeah, in your defense, I mean, you didn't make a decision. You were supporting somebody insofar as the thought that, really, and even while you were doing so, you asked him hard questions. I mean, that you should be praised for that, man. Whether just because your opinion about somebody could be incorrect, but even to that, even taking a step further, everyone knows my opinion on where he is and so far in Israel and so on. But overall, I would say for all it's at least it's possible that he's simply saying what people want to hear to get elected, and then he'll change. I don't believe that, but I know a lot of people think that. So all I'm pointing out is we still don't necessarily know for sure, but a nod to you in general for having, being able to say that now. I just think some people always want to give you like a gotcha moment. Like, you missed this and you did that. And, I have opinions about people. Like, look, here's a good joke. When I first saw Fauci, and I wasn't super immersed in his background before all of COVID-19. So I had never even seen him before. And this guy walks up and I'm like, I said I remember on the show, I said, oh, he seems like an honest guy. I forget what I said, something stupid, right? But I very, very immediately was like, okay, that's not true. He's, blah, blah, blah. I went and researched him. My point is that we all can have wrong opinions about somebody. It ultimately matters how you go forward from there. And, I think RFK Jr., in more and more to me begins to seem like he's not the person that he's been presenting. But hey, guys, that's politics. That's literally everybody in politics. So we need to remember that. But I still just think that he was probably an attempt, if he does turn out to be exactly what he appears to be, what we're talking about now, an attempt to pull in people into people that might have wanted a third party candidate kind of scenario. Mm-hmm. And I think they're afraid to bring that in actuality, But yeah, I think that overall, what's going on right now is exposing a lot of people. And I think that's really important. And I think more than any other conversation, I think there's a lot of people that sidled up next to the COVID truth movement, whatever you want to call that, because they saw momentum. They saw that and they just simply were like, what's this guy saying? I'll say the same thing. I think there's a lot of those people and they got a lot of momentum. Yeah. And then all of a sudden this conversation comes out and they're just not only just, in my opinion, wrong on this topic, but doing things that completely contradict what was the core point of the things before. Free speech, for example. You can't pretend you're pro free speech, then go, oh, except if they say those things. It just shows you these people aren't real. And I take that as one of the few positives in all this horrible genocide that we're seeing, that we're sussing these people out. And it's important.
That is the biggest point, by the way. I think that's the hats off moment. Jimmy did a video on it, Snowflakes. We've been calling him out. I'm friends with Laura Loomer. I texted her personally directly. I was like, Laura, how can you say this stuff? Viva Fry and Robert Barnes have been the most disappointing ones that hurt the most. Brett Weinstein, all these other people, freedom of speech, except for this here. It is definitely a mask off moment.
Ruben went on a tour exposing cancel culture. And now I'm seeing things where he's trying to get people removed from platforms because they're saying things about it. And just people, and look, I'm never going to say that means that any of these people are being exposed as the shills they really are. That's certainly I'm considering, right? But ultimately, it shows you that this topic, whether it's because of your religious ties or your political ties, people lose all objectivity around this topic. And it's striking. And I think what it's also showing you is, and this is one of the important parts that we really didn't get into too deep in this, is that the Zionist difference, right? Than Judaism, than Israel, like the Zionism manipulation of Jews, of Israelis is what we're really talking about. And further than that, that Zionist entity influence on other countries. You mentioned Epstein. This is the Mossad overlap. This was what this was. It's a sexual blackmail network in order to influence and manipulate governments, output their policy. That's what that was. And we all weirdly dispute that when put our nose up at it like it's a conspiracy story in other contexts. It's a real thing. And I think that what we're seeing is people like the Biden, the open, proud Zionist that he tells you he is, they're not only shooting themselves in the foot, they're shooting themselves in the chest right now with this story. They're losing everything to maintain the line that they're not breaking the law right now. How do you explain that? I think it's because of that kind of influence, And one last thing to Don's point, the Lehigh Party which was kind of spurred off from the Irgun Zionist origin party, tried to line up themselves with Nazi Germany twice. That's on the record. That's on Wikipedia, right? So the origins of Zionism were trying to line themselves up with the worst people in the world. So we shouldn't really dismiss that this might exactly be, that this entity would not shy away from carrying out these kind of acts or allowing them or doing what they're doing in Gaza right now.
And Ryan, it is the top of the hour. It is noon. It's noon. I know you probably got to jump out of here.
All right, I'll get out of here, Pasta. Don't be so rude.
No, you can stay as long as you like. Sam Tripoli should be matriculating in any moment now. Jimmy Dore in about 15 minutes. Like I said, eventually want to go over to my new channel and my new channel only so we can get as many people over there. Signed up, subscribed. We've already had an amazing day. Almost 500 people on our YouTube channels, which is great for the monetization. We've had over 200 people on our Rumble channel, over 100 people on my brand new channel. First day, first video. Amazing. Thank you so much. But Ryan, can you let everybody know where they can find you, how they can be a part of the Last American Vagabond? And I think it was great today that you come on. It's been amazing working with you. I remember when I was following your videos before me and Fam even started our channel, right? And I was watching your videos on you just laying out what was going on in Israel, some of the bombing and the attacks, and your whole mentality of like, hey, man, don't believe me. Don't listen to me. Go see for yourself. Question everything, which is your motto or your logo or your theme statement, whatever you want to call it over there at the Last American Vagabond. But I think it's such a great way of opening the doors and questioning things. And, I think it really leads into what I've been promoting for quite some time and what Fam has been able to do too as well, is not participate in cancel culture and not demonize anybody out there and have conversations from different ideologies and people of different backgrounds and different religions, thoughts, and the whole 9 yards. But let's bring them in really quickly while you say goodbye, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey,
Sam is here.
All the cool kids are here.
We were just saying goodbye to Ryan.
Ryan,
but I know you guys know each other. I think I've introduced a couple people today to Ryan that he can work with. Mark Sloboda and Don DeBar would be awesome. I mean, I would watch those shows, and I think it would get thousands and thousands of views, even with the censorship, because Ryan Christian is considered one of the most censored men on the internet out there for quite some time.
It's so bad.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
I'll let you guys have your great talk. Well, what's funny about that is as I've said before, I used to push back on like, well, I don't know, maybe there's more, but like, I think using metrics, it's not even debatable at this point. How many places I've been censored repeatedly, especially with pirate channels. So I wear that proudly. And I think that my work speaks for itself, and how you just take a look at it, you can clearly tell that we're not promoting conspiracy theory or whatever else they're trying to say. We're pointing out how the government's conspiring against you is what we're really doing in every possible way. But thank you guys. Congrats on the new channel. And it's good to see you both. And Sam, good to see you, man. Have a great conversation. And we'll talk soon, guys.
Where else can people find you? What's the easiest way to find you since you're being censored and all over the place? And
thelastamericanvagabond.com. Just, sign up there, subscribe so you can donate. And everything is that's the main hub. Don't let them be the conduit between you and our information. Go right to thelastamericanvagabond.com. Thanks, guys.
Ryan, I love you, brother. Thank you so much for coming on this special day.
Thanks.
Here is a clip with Abby Martin and her interview with Rania Khalek on Israel, Hamas, Palestine, and Lebanon.
If Hamas really does get to a point where it is threatened with serious eradication as a resistance force, then Hezbollah would have to get more involved. So it's a waiting game. This war at the south of Lebanon has been going on now for 37 days. It's escalated to the point where now the Israelis are hitting 40 kilometers into Lebanon. The rules of engagement are breaking down. Hezbollah is running out of targets to hit, and you can only go up the escalation ladder notch by notch for so long before it reaches that tipping point and triggers a bigger war. So if the rules of engagement are breaking down, the real question becomes, how much longer will the genocide in Gaza continue? Because the more things escalate against Gaza and against Hamas, the more likely things will escalate from Lebanon, the more likely we get to that trigger point of war between Lebanon and Israel, and the more likely we get to a trigger point of all-out regional war, which absolutely nobody, including the Americans, want. So really, it's just how much longer are the Americans going to allow the Israelis to slaughter children in Gaza? That's the big question.
Thank you so much for coming on the Empire Files, Rania.
It is an honor to join you, Abby. And also, can I just say that you look fantastic?
I'm just trying to keep up with you, my friend. Rania,
stop.
You've been in Lebanon for quite a while. I'm just curious of like how it feels to be there right now next to a maniac state openly committing genocide and declaring that they want to invade your country. It must be pretty crazy on the ground.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously the insane genocide taking place in Gaza has, the victims are there and the atrocities are there, but there has been a war taking place in Lebanon as well, mostly isolated to the border, but it's a fierce war nonetheless. And, I'm in Beirut, and I've been in this kind of bubble of safety, and there's a reason there's a bubble of safety. It's because in Lebanon we have something called Hezbollah, and I know we're going to get into that. That acts as a deterrent and really a protector of the country against the kinds of atrocities that you see taking place in Gaza. Nevertheless, this is like psychological torture for the people here, first and foremost, because they're watching their people be massacred, just like everybody in the world is. I mean, it's horrifying. But for it to just be 200 miles away is just, I don't even know how to describe that other than every morning you wake up knowing that there's a genocide happening so close to you, and you feel really helpless because there's nothing you can do about it. And then the people carrying out that genocide, like you said, are just every day, all the time. And this is before even the latest genocide on Gaza. Like, the Israeli leadership is constantly threatening to flatten Lebanon, to take Lebanon back to the Stone Age, to wipe Lebanon off the map. These are comments that a lot of leaders have made in recent weeks. But it's also something we're used to hearing here because it's not a normal country. It's a country that's constantly threatening and bombing its neighbors. And just yesterday, we're recording on Sunday, the Israeli Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, who recently came to fame calling Palestinians human animals, threatened to do to Beirut what Israel has done to Gaza. He literally said, the people of Lebanon will pay the price if it escalates anymore with Hezbollah. He's just like threatening to kill civilians in Lebanon, and to flatten the country, to do to Lebanon what's happening to Gaza, to carry out another genocide. And that is psychological warfare. It's meant to scare people here. And so, how are people here doing? The first couple of weeks, people were walking around quite nervous because of what might happen in Lebanon, as well as devastated and heartbroken. But now it's weirdly become this kind of normal. It's a new normal in Lebanon where you just understand that every day, any hour, things could deteriorate and hit the fan within 20 minutes. It'll happen. If it happens in Lebanon, it'll happen very, very quickly. It's been a gradual escalation, and we're going to talk about the details around that. But like I said, it's been isolated to the south. The rest of the country has kind of been operating, business as usual, but under the impression that at any time, everything could go to shit. And that's a weird way for people to live. And they've been living that now for the past 5 weeks. And it's not normal. And one thing I'll add is the Western embassies haven't helped because, since this all started, every 2-3 days, you get a new alert from the American embassy in Beirut or the State Department being like, leave as soon as possible while commercial flights are still available because the security situation could deteriorate and we can't help you.
Get out while you can.
And that also plays into people's fears here.
At this point, 37 days into the genocide, how many babies do you need to see pulled out of rubble? How many children without parents? How many dead bodies do you need to see to be outraged? To have moral, shock? It's just, at this point, you have to be racist because if you are not impacted by 4,000 plus brown children being slaughtered in cold blood, who are just purely innocent souls who are being terrorized by Israel with your tax dollars, there's something wrong with you. There is something wrong with you.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I do love that most people in the world, I think, are horrified, but it shocks me to my core that there's people who justify this still.
Right.
And the most powerful people in America are justifying it and like bending over backwards of who can support the slaughter of children more. I mean, it's like, I know that Nikki Haley's seen videos, you know, of babies dying in Gaza. I'm sure she has. I'm sure Joe Biden has. I'm sure Jill Biden has. I'm sure Anthony Blinken has. I'm sure all these State Department robots that do their press conferences have seen these videos because you can't not see them. They're all over social media, everywhere. And it's just, these children are being crushed in their homes. They're losing their limbs. They're losing their parents and their siblings. They're in hospitals surrounded by bombs and snipers. Like, what is this absolute torture and hell? I mean, infants in incubators, Abby. Like, infants in incubators are dying at Shifa Hospital due to a lack of oxygen. I'm sure you saw that haunting image of all these infants, 37 of them, because 2 of them died. Upon this recording, it might be more after this comes out, but like 37 infants lined up on gurneys out of their incubators because there's no fuel and oxygen for the incubators. So they're just wrapped up in blankets to keep them hopefully warm enough to survive. And probably these heroes, these nurses and doctors who are the ultimate hero of heroes, are pumping oxygen manually for these infants so they don't die. And probably the reason they're in incubators in the first place is because their mothers gave birth too soon because they were stressed out because there's a genocide happening around them. I just can't believe there are people like Abby. I tweeted that image out and there was responses to me saying, but Hamas. Like, I don't care whose babies you showed me. I don't care if it's the most disgustingly rabid, crazy, fascistic settler imaginable in the West Bank or anywhere in Israel. I don't care how awful they were. If I saw an image or knew that an infant in an incubator was being deprived of life and there was a way to stop it, there's no way in hell I could ever justify that. Ever, because I'm not a racist psychopath.
Right. Rania, that image will go down in history books. I mean, it really is like the most glaring example of the cognitive dissonance that people can look at. 37 babies laying on the ground covered in like foil or whatever, trying to keep them warm. Like you said, their mothers were probably malnourished. I can't even imagine what women about to giving birth with cesarean sections with no anesthetics.
No anesthesia.
The babies in incubators. This was the lie that was during the Gulf War. They're throwing babies out of incubators. It was the most horrifying thing you can possibly throw out there to dehumanize a group of people. Well, guess what? They're doing it right now. They're throwing babies out of incubators, literally. Look at the pictures. How could the world look at this and say, not do everything in their power to give Al-Shifa Hospital generators and fuel and care for these infants? There should be rescue squads going in there and grabbing these babies instead of sitting back and going, oh, well, but Hamas shouldn't have built a command center under the hospital, Rania. Too bad. And guess what we have for proof? Fucking CGI renderings that Netanyahu puts out. So-called operatives, again, with doctored recordings being like, yo, bro, I got ambulances. I got so many ambulances here. Like, I feel like I am watching a horror movie from like the abyss of hell. Like, how is this happening in modern history? I mean, this is nuts. It's mind-blowingly nuts. And then you have snipers surrounding the hospital, literally looking in their scopes and pulling the fucking trigger of kids in the ICU ward.
Yeah. There's a paraplegic that was apparently shot. Like, they're shooting at people moving inside. So like medical professionals, staffers are not able to get to patients because they can't move around properly because there's snipers shooting at them when they move. Like, this is a war on hospitals. It's unprecedented. This has never happened before.
Why do you?
There's never been a sustained
you said that, and that was a
campaign.
super good point. You're like, has this ever happened? Like, yes, Israel targets medics. Yes, they target hospitals. They shell whatever the hell they want. But this is unprecedented. right? I mean,
and I mean, they're telling, but you know, they're telling us why. They actually are telling us why. I mean, the Israelis are saying that they want to empty northern Gaza of civilians. They want to empty northern Gaza of people. They want to depopulate it. The Israeli officials are repeatedly saying that, and they actually have leaked like plans for doing so, for emptying out northern Gaza, moving people to the south. It's a part of a push to get people out of Gaza and into the Sinai so they can literally retake Gaza. And they're saying it, right? That's why they're destroying hospitals. I mean, think about it. It's obviously not because of Hamas. Like anyone who perpetuates this ridiculous notion of a Hamas headquarters under every hospital, by the way, like not even just Shifa. There's a Hamas headquarters under every single hospital in Gaza. Anyone who perpetuates that is an idiot or is just justifying the unjustifiable. And you know what? Even if there was, let's entertain it for a moment. If there was a Hamas headquarters under a hospital, you don't bomb the hospital. It's crazy. You don't take out the hospital. That's insane. But why? So why destroy hospitals? I mean, yeah, it's not just genocide. It's not just Israel's completely insane, both of which, by the way, are very true. But there's also a military side to this. Like, if you want everybody to leave the north, you need to destroy everything in the north. And especially the places where people who didn't leave are sheltering. A lot of people didn't or couldn't leave. There's people actually in the north still in their homes. Not everybody has left northern Gaza. There are people still in their homes. But in any situation in the world, you assume hospitals are safe. They're supposed to be protected, like sanctified places for like life, and you don't bomb it, right? There's rules against that. But obviously the rules don't apply when it comes to the way Israel does war, or genocide, I should say. But because these hospitals are just sheltering tens of thousands of people, they're a threat. You need to get rid of those people. You need them to go south. So what do? You need to shut down the hospitals. That's what, like, why else would you deprive them of fuel and of medicine and of any resources so that they have to shut down? But the thing I want to note, by the way, is there are doctors who are refusing to leave their patients because that's what it means to leave, by the way. There's people who can't leave. There's patients who can't leave. I think there was one hospital where it was reported in the Washington Post that doctors from Doctors Without Borders all left, and they left the babies there. Like, they were like, we had to leave this many children there because we couldn't take them with us because they're in a hospital and they're sick. So they're just there, and I don't know how they're going to survive. There are Palestinian doctors in Gaza who are refusing to leave their patients, and they're willing to die. They're willing to stay and die with their patients. And I want to just say that is, there's armed resistance, Abby, which is like what Al-Qassam and Islamic Jihad and the PFLP militias and all of these various Palestinian factions that are fighting with weapons. There's that kind of resistance. And then there's what the doctors at the hospitals are doing. That's another kind of, the nurses, that's another kind of resistance, and the tech workers. And that's important because they're not leaving because they're like resisting Israel's attempt to ethnically cleanse them. That is what's happening. They're like resisting genocide. And I really think that like those people need to be held up as like the best people that exist in the entire world.
I have never seen anything like it, Rania, when doctors have to stop what they're doing, go outside and plea to the world to not bomb their hospitals in response to 100 Israeli doctors issuing a letter saying bomb the hospitals. It is also, staggeringly atrocious.
The American Medical Association, there was an attempt by, did you see that? There was an attempt by people who are part of the AMA, which this shouldn't surprise us, by the way, because the AMA refuses to support single-payer healthcare. It's like an organization that has a board full of like rich white people who just hate everyone. But there was an attempt to get like some sort of like statement from the AMA out to call for a ceasefire in Gaza, given what's happening at the hospitals specifically. And the leaders of the AMA refused to even entertain it. They like shut it down. They shut the debate down.
They should all revoke their medical licenses. If this is about humanity, it's about the Hippocratic Oath. But these people seem to just throw their oath out the window, and it's either about for-profit white people on the board of the AMA or just Israeli doctors who are genocidal and just don't care about saving lives, even when it comes to babies laying on the ground being thrown out of incubators, Rania.
Do you know how many people in Israel support a ceasefire? Okay, like I saw Asad Abu Khalil tweet this out.
Yeah, please tell me.
According to one poll, it was 3%. And he was like, I guess we're just supposed to make peace with the 3% of Israelis who support a ceasefire.
Bro.
Like, what? Yeah.
Okay.
That's a societal issue. I don't know how you fix, but anyway.
Well, fighting between Israel and Hezbollah ramped up a lot since October 7th. I was looking at just a timeline of all the escalations. It's really crazy. I mean, pretty much every single day there's fighting going on back and forth. A lot of soldiers have died. It's really hard to tell on the Israeli side the losses because of the censorship within the Israeli military, but I'm sure that the losses are significant enough. And yeah, a lot of Hezbollah soldiers have died. We have not seen an escalation like this since the war in Lebanon in 2006. And I mean, it's just crazy what Israel's doing there too, because all eyes are on Gaza. But at the same time, every time that there is something happening in Palestine, Israel kind of uses a smokescreen to just assault Lebanon. And you kind of see that all the time, like, oh, Israel's bombing Lebanon again. Like, what the hell is going on there? And they're using this right now, shelling ambulances, shelling hospitals, shelling civilian targets, using white phosphorus munitions and blocking like fire departments from going to put out fires that are caused by these white phosphorus bombs. Complete insanity going on there, Rania. I want you to talk about what is happening on the ground, what has been happening over the last 6 weeks or so, and also just give us like a broader historical context to this border conflict.
So since October 8th, for the last 37, are we 37 days into the genocide? Since October 8th, there has been a war in southern Lebanon between Hezbollah and Israel. As soon as Israel began its war on Gaza after October 7th, Hezbollah started firing at Israel to alleviate pressure on Hamas in Gaza. And the thinking there is to redirect part of the Israeli military apparatus to the north, because Hezbollah is part of what's called the resistance axis. I would even say that Hezbollah is sort of like the leader of the resistance axis, at least militarily at this point. And it started out about like 5 kilometers between each border. They were firing on each other, each side. It was a tit for tat escalation, sort of another, one notch up the escalation ladder, very, very gradual. A couple weeks in, it went to 10 kilometers. Then a couple weeks later, it went to 20 kilometers. And then actually just this weekend, Israel fired at an area of Lebanon called Zahrani at a truck, an empty pickup truck, and that was 40 kilometers into Lebanon. So that was another escalation. And in that time, Israel has killed journalists intentionally. That's what Reporters Without Borders determined, that it deliberately targeted journalists, and it killed a Reuters correspondent. And on top of that, they recently escalated, actually about a week ago, they fired at a couple cars that were driving. Actually, a lot of people in Beirut, they go south during the weekends, or not south, they go to the villages during the weekends, and a lot of people live in the south. Like, I have a mountain village. A lot of people from my village work in Beirut or live in Beirut, and then they'll go spend the weekend in their village home, right? That's like a pretty common thing that happens here. So this family was leaving their house in the south to go back to Beirut, like most people do on Sunday nights. And the Israelis targeted them with a drone and killed a grandmother, and the mother, I think, later died, and 3 children, 3 daughters. And the reason I raise all that is just to say there is a war happening in the South. And before I get to the sort of like background of some of the 2006 stuff you asked about, I just want to note, militarily speaking, what this has meant in terms of numbers, why Hezbollah is doing this. Mm-hmm. A third of Israel's military apparatus is present on the Lebanese border because of the war in southern Lebanon. That's more than like 80,000 Israeli soldiers. And then so if you think about how many are engaged in Gaza, it's about 100,000 Israeli soldiers are engaged in the war on Gaza. So 80,000 at the northern border. So again, that's to alleviate pressure from Hamas. Half of the Israeli Navy has been deployed to the Lebanese front, which is apparently more than the capacity deployed to Gaza. A quarter of the Israeli Air Force has been deployed to the Lebanese front, which includes something like 100 different type of aircraft, right? Half of the missile and air defense units deployed to the Lebanese front from Israel. That's depleting. That's meant to deplete the Iron Dome. About a third of logistical units have been deployed to the Lebanese front. 65,000, this is actually important, 65,000 Israelis have been evacuated from about 43, what we call settlements, in the north of Israel. And then another 70,000 have evacuated something like 50 settlements in the Gaza envelope, as they call it.
Wow.
So that's over 100,000 Israelis have left the north and the south of what's considered Israel. That's unprecedented. That's huge. So that's all just to say what's happening in Lebanon has already done some damage to Israel and is not only just alleviating pressure on Gaza, but is also taking away resources from the Israeli military. So, and again, the war at the border, it's not at the scale of Gaza, obviously, but there's been Hezbollah has lost over 80 soldiers, which is a lot. Why is it that Israel isn't just going all out on Lebanon, right? It's been 37 days. Well, in 2006, Hezbollah fought a war against Israel, and Israel had to basically admit defeat after 33 days of doing what it does best, which is killing civilians. Israel killed over 1,000 Lebanese civilians in that war, and they lost 121 soldiers, which at that time was quite unprecedented. Israel doesn't really ever have to lose soldiers, or at least by then it hadn't really ever lost that many, not since like wars in like the 70s. So that was a very big deal. And that they were fighting against this much weaker militia force, Hezbollah. And that's, Israel occupied, just some more background, Israel, for those who don't know, Israel occupied southern Lebanon from 1985 during the Lebanese Civil War up until the year 2000. And in that time, it committed atrocity after atrocity. It ran torture facilities. It funded this fascist militia called the South Lebanon Army to carry out lots of his dirty work. And on and on and on and on. And Hezbollah emerged in the South as a resistance force in the 80s to that Israeli occupation. Does that sound like a similar story, Abby, that we've heard before? And in 2000, Hezbollah basically kicked the Israelis out. They forced the Israelis to withdraw. It was a huge victory for Arabs across the region. For the first time, Arabs liberated land from Israel. And so since 2006, Hezbollah has only gotten stronger. It has gotten bigger. It's got like over 100,000, I believe, soldiers ready to fight and like ready to die for the country. They're very well trained. They're very well armed at this point. I think they had like Katyusha rockets back in 2006, and they'd exacted a lot of damage on the Israelis by firing on Israel. Now they have precision guided missiles. They have a lot now. They've got a lot. They have barely showcased what they have. They've got drones. They've got years of on-the-ground experience in Syria, fighting alongside conventional armies like the Russians. So it's a much stronger, much more powerful force. And for that reason, Israel has not dared to mess with Lebanon in terms of going into a full-out war since. That said, the longer the genocide in Gaza continues, the more likely a wider war in Lebanon becomes and a wider regional war becomes. And we can get into that in a bit, into like why that is, and also what Hezbollah's red lines are. But I just really want to emphasize that Hezbollah has acted for the last 37 days. Its existence as a powerful military force has acted as a powerful deterrent to Israel doing to Lebanon what it's done in the past. And that's huge. It's been 37 days, and the Lebanese airport is still functioning. Usually, whenever there's a problem between Israel and Lebanon, the first thing they do is bomb the airport.
Yeah.
They haven't done that this time. And the reason they haven't done it is because, they still can. It might happen. But they know that when they do, Hezbollah has the capacity to hit their airport. So there's a calculation at play that makes the Israelis think, 15 times before they want to really escalate against Hezbollah.
That's what I was thinking too. When I was looking at this timeline, it seems like there's a lot of reluctance.
I just want to make the point that Lebanon at this point, in terms of occupying it, is off limits to Israel. In 2006, the Israelis tried so hard to invade Lebanon. They tried so hard. One village after another, 1,000 of their troops couldn't make it past a few dozen Hezbollah guys in villages in the south. Like, it was such a humiliating defeat. And with Hamas in Gaza, we're talking about people who are operating out of a concentration camp that's under siege, which has now been turned into a death camp. And they're using lots of homemade weaponry. With Hezbollah, it's a much different situation. You're talking about what amounts to an army operating in a country that is not under siege, that has lots of access points to get stuff into the country, and that has weapons coming from outside. So again, a completely different ballgame. So Israel, as much as it would love to occupy so much of Lebanon, it just can't.
Right. The fact that Hamas is like retrofitting like things that Israel uses to try to terrorize them and shoot it back at them. And then, just the complete loss of an actual ability to have a ground game. The cowardly nature of Israel to just like assault people from the sky and just kill civilians en masse, and just how scared they are to actually go in and fight people.
I just want to roll real quick. I just to build on what you're saying. Apparently in Gaza, they've got drones like firing bullets. Like they can't even go and fire bullets themselves. They hide in tanks. They hide in tanks and then just like fire bullets from drones. Like it's the most cowardly thing imaginable.
It's insane.
Now we have a great clip from AM Wake Up with Steve Poikonen, Chris from Rantcast, and Ryan Christian.
This thing from the high wire. And we talked about this a little bit, I believe, the other day, right? Was that
I mean, yeah, my clip go, yeah.
Huh?
Well, I've just been looking at my Pogo file folder and the Pogo audio and the Zephyr projects, and yeah, it all goes with this shit.
Let's see. The FCC voted. Well, what's the date on the thing here? Where you don't have a date on it? All right. Voted today on a plan that gives the federal government full control of the internet. The plan passed by a 3-2 margin. Press release posted immediately after the meeting stated, under the new rules, the commission can investigate possible instances of discrimination of broadband access, work with companies to solve problems, facilitate mediation, and when necessary, penalize companies for violating the rules. What rules? The FCC will review consumer complaints of digital discrimination of access through an improved consumer complaint portal, and staff will meet monthly to assess trends in the complaint patterns. Finally, the commission adopted model policies and best practices that will support state, local, and tribal governments in their efforts to combat digital discrimination. So what the fuck does any of that shit mean? The decision means the Biden administration is well on its way to implementing the plan. The FCC commissioner...
It's all it is, a blanket for hate speech.
Yeah. Basically, reads like a planning document drawn up in the faculty lounge of a university Soviet studies department. Yeah, we talked about this Monday, I think. Let's see. Unlawful power grab that chooses central planning. Okay, the plan is marketed those will prevent digital discrimination in a way to ensure equal access to broadband internet in the U.S. While equal access is a component of liberty and freedom, this plan gives sweeping access and regulatory control over all aspects of the internet business. According to the plan document, the FCC would have the power to regulate the following aspects as it relates to each ISP.
The plan document is 2 pages.
Yeah.
A page and a half.
Yeah. Do you have it?
Yeah. Well, I think this is the plan document right here, right? Or no, this is the press release. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I was looking at it and like, holy shit. The plan doc, it's fucking page and a half.
So
but yeah, discrimination on the internet, guys. Just
yeah, the FCC can now regulate network infrastructure deployment, reliability, upgrades, maintenance, customer premise equipment, installation, customer premises equipment, the router that goes into your house. The FCC and the federal government are now going to determine what router goes into your house. That's what they're saying. Imposition of late fees. That's sure. So everybody wanted socialized internet, right? Well, the FCC can now conduct a credit check on you to determine whether or not you're allowed to have the internet. Rad. Okay. Let's see. The FCC could now regulate internet use and access by landlords, construction crews, marketing agencies, banks, even the government. Sure.
Dude, I like trying to look up the PDF.
And Ryan's with us too, so we could
give me all kinds of different shit.
Go ahead and bring him in. Dropping in on a Thursday, our good friend and brother Ryan Christian, Last American Vagabond. What's happening, buddy?
T-Lab Thursdays.
Sure. We had a whole week of
Oh, I like your background. That's cool.
Right on.
The sun. That's neat. I'm a big. I've got one of my first tattoos forever ago was a sun that I drew. So I've just always been. I love the intricate designs with like suns like that. It's a cool background. Is that a picture or is that a
It's a
blanket?
tapestry. It's a tapestry. I'm on the other
Okay.
side of the state currently at my kid's house and my kid broadcasting from my kid's room.
Nice. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for letting me jump on this morning. Were you just talking about the internet, kind of the Biden thing with the internet going forward? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting. I don't know if you go over like weirdly the partisan game with this, whether they think it's a game or not. Like I saw Glenn Beck talking about this. Everyone should be concerned about this, obviously. Like even just hearing what you just read as I jump in, I'm like, oh shit, that's crazy. It's like that's nuts. But it seems like they're using this as a way to like justify why 5G should be rolled out right away. You're getting that in the conversation? Like people
I
are going
see that part of it. I see the mass implementation of technology that they're going to be able to use to claim regulatory aspects over all other areas of industry that are affected by internet access. Yeah.
Well, it just concerns me because both these things are bad. And it's like now we're stuck in this position where this is how the two-party system works, right? Where those aren't the only two options on the table, or complete internet control of your life or roll out 5G. Kind of like that's the dynamic that's being put forward, like that they're artificially holding back this amazing 5G future so they can justify this next move. And I'm like, well, both those things are terrible. It's like it just freaks me out. Like the thing you're talking about is it's to stop people like us, I think.
Yeah.
What is like? I mean, we could read the press release, I guess, that the FCC put out. Have you went over that? Like, I don't. This is like now the Restrict Act will come into play. Yeah, dude, this all started with the net neutrality. I mean, it goes back even further to 96 with Clinton, or 95, 96, 95 with Clinton. And when he opened it up so phones had to be able to be activated, even like if the fucking battery's taken out. That was from the Federal Telecommunications Act 96, right? And now you have this shit. FCC adopts rules to prevent and eliminate digital discrimination. Now, the only way to do this is with IDs.
Right. I mean, that's the only thing they want here is,
look at the uptick in, Nikki Haley is the one that's being used the most, but it's trending. So it's being said over and over, this needs to be done. This needs to be done. This needs to be done. We'll do this.
I don't even believe anymore. Like we get jammed these, this is what everybody thinks. Here's what's trending. It's like I don't know. I just think it's weird.
No, they literally, we've seen on here how as we're talking, like Twitter trends will begin to change to what we're talking about.
No, I'm not suggesting that people are talking about. I just mean I don't fully believe. I feel like we're being corralled and cowed into certain directions using the illusion that far too many Americans are swayed by the illusion, or at least the suggestion that this is what everybody else thinks.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. As we talk.
Oh, so you think they're manipulating the trending?
It will manipulate the trending right in front of my face, trying to get my Twitter to, me to click on it and sway it to wherever.
It's weird.
Wherever they are hearing the echo chamber they think is going, basically.
Right,
That's what it seems like. I mean, it'll fucking change right in front of me as we're talking, and we've shown it a couple times do that.
It's not like it's weird how people push back on stuff like this. It's like we've all like weirdly, without acknowledging it, have accepted that you can like talk around your phone and ads will pop up, and it's like we don't like even though we know that people still go, but is that like they act like it's a kind of like an unspoken conspiracy theory that it's real. We fucking know that happens.
100% real.
So that's the same thing, right? It's just
and both of you guys are right. Both of you guys are right about what's happening with the manipulation on Twitter, because there's your side crawler of what it's showing you, and Elon told you we're going to curate that to your bubble. That's going to be
literally
bubble
says
based
for you.
And then there's what's trending nationally or internationally or whatever. And that's where I agree 100% with Ryan that's a from whole cloth generated operation in order to lead people into one direction or another of emotional knee-jerk manipulation.
Yeah, this one it's for you and following. It's you get the chamber or what we tell you.
And I hope that I'm wrong. You know, I can't prove that's exactly what's happening, but I think it's obvious that people in positions of power like this, whether it's Elon or people that are invested, or, you know, whether, I don't necessarily mean financially, but just in the what Twitter is becoming, you know, would want they would at least lean on some things, right? Like, it's what happens in power structures and things like this. You know, it's not real that that some people may be talking about it, but if they want you to be believing in the Great Reset or agreeing with this or thinking Israel's in the right, you know, that these things get corralled and driven. We all agree on this. I think it's just so frustrating that I want us to realize that the majority is not what they say it is. That's my bigger point in all of that, whether it's voting or anything else. And I know I've been saying it for a long time, but I think we can fucking see it today on full display, especially with Israel, you know?
We can. And to your point about whether or not you can prove that they're doing this exact thing, there's been congressional hearings going on for the last year and a half where it's being proved and revealed and all of this, and you know, an open hearing that beyond what we're talking about is happening multiple times a day, every day, direct order of not just the U.S. government or the Biden administration, but multiple world governments and or their intelligence agencies. So far worse we can prove than what you're suggesting at the moment. So I think it's asinine to assume that if they're already doing much worse, they wouldn't be doing significantly less just as a way to frustrate or manipulate the way that people go about taking in what they think is reality.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's just, you know, classic irritating objectivity, right? We have to say, we don't know for sure, but I agree.
It puts you in a point to where, you know, now some idiot can just walk in and be like, well, you can't prove anything you're talking about. So I was and it's the same idiot logic that was on display last night. Did you see how I did this? You see how I brought it on?
Well played.
All right. But yeah, it is the same mentality that was displayed by Laura Loomer last night in her little yelling match with Dave Smith.
Man. Did you actually watch the whole thing?
So I listened to a decent chunk of it, but I was in and out of it. I had other shit going on too.
Man, Chris, did you watch any of it?
Yeah, I mean, I watched a little bit of it, but
Chris has some clips. We can
have a
take
couple clips, but I don't know if there any clip you guys want to see. I mean,
well, no,
I have
why
one of
not? Why
Laura
not?
stating
It's all
obvious.
It's all good fodder, my friend. There's no reason not to run them.
Yeah, but before you play them now, though, like it's really wild. The way, I mean, look, just stated right out of the gate. I mean, obviously, I have a very low opinion of Laura Loomer, and I don't think that. I think it's objective, in my opinion, based on things that she's gotten wrong, lied about, blah blah blah. But so that's stated. That's a bias. I think it's very clear. I believe I'm able to be objective when it comes to facts and things, but we all have biases. And on the same note, I think I have a pretty high opinion of Dave Smith and his effort to be objective and very eloquent and insightful. Like he's a very smart guy, you know, and not that I agree with everything he says. So that being stated, coming into this, I mean, obviously, like I said the day before, I think he was going to destroy her, was completely, dismantle, which I believe is what happened. But it's worse than I ever expected. Like this for multiple reasons, right? I mean, serious though, like it was really bad. I tweeted that her opening statement, I tweeted, she has already lost this. And I meant that, not because I just like, she sucks. She literally created her starting argument. Well, and I should say that's obvious that I don't think she either understands how a debate functions or didn't care, because she never even attempted to counter his points or anything. And the whole point, usually people who know debate, you start with your premise, and then the whole point is you sort of defending that premise. You didn't do any of that, right? She just was all over the place. It was as if she was arguing the entire time with what she prepped, what she thought he was going to say. And then even though he said different things, she was like responding to what she expected him to say. It was
Dave was
fascinating.
even trying to coach her at a
Right.
couple of points. But Laura, I'm not a Democrat. Laura, every time you say "but this," that doesn't apply to the conversation or the points that I have. You know, you're gonna have to argue with the person in the room across the table from you.
Called a
And
debate.
that's something that she was incapable of doing.
Yeah, she's arguing against the talking points that they're told are what everybody other than their side are saying. They're like it's almost as if she actually bought
noticed she
into
couldn't
the
look up
illusion
when
they're
she was
presenting. Go ahead.
Yes.
some of the
Chris, go ahead.
points she would make, she wouldn't even look up.
Well, you
Like,
know
she
why?
kept
Because she
looking
knew she
straight
was
down, like,
losing, and she knew
yeah.
that she was intellectually outmatched. I mean, you can see it on her face the whole time, you know. But to the starting point, she basically came out and was like, this isn't even a debate. We're not even dividing or debating what we're like. She told you right in the beginning. This is about whether you agree with terrorism or not. And so she's like, and then he went right to the obvious point. It's like, didn't call her George Bush. Well, it was like, that's the same logic. And this is the entire problem with this discussion, that it's not, you know, and then it just devolved from there. But I do want to point out that some people are probably going to be mad at me for this, but I got to be honest, man. The guy who was moderating this was not good. That was one of the worst moderations. That wasn't a debate because of
No,
his
'cause
inability
he was
to
like,
actually moderate the debate. Right? Even if Loomer had no idea how to debate, he should have. I quite frankly think this person was more interested in being a part of that conversation and inserting his points, which is not what a moderator
he was
should do.
leaning to the right, as you could say.
Well,
That's
or
a
just
joke,
he was
'cause
clearly. Well, let's be clear about this too. If you look at if you have here, I actually have the image. You're right though, Chris. Here's the. Let me bring up the image of this, just so we can laugh.
Seemed to be a lot biased, you know. I mean, he wanted to be part of the conversation and
Yeah,
like
well,
was
I mean, look,
agreeing
I
with
don't
one
think
or
he
the
knows what he's
other.
talking about. So let's be very blunt. I don't think he knows. The guy was anyway. The point was that I can't find it, but Zero Hedge even has on the presentation of this and the graphics. It is a flag combination of the Israeli flag and then like a weird black and it was meant to be Zero Hedge blended with the Israeli flag, and then the whole time, every single point is like so. They're bringing up graphics about Israel stuff and images of bad things. And, you know, it's all one-sided. The whole thing was it was very strange and controlled. And it should be mentioned that there was no, I mean, even like Dave right out of the gate was like, I'm not defending Palestine. I'm here to defend freedom, which I love that he did that because that's what we should be arguing for. But they framed it as Palestine versus Israel and then invited 3 Jewish people, 2 of them Zionists, nobody from Palestine. It's just like the whole thing was a very strange setup, you know? But again, the way that the guy was not really engaging. He would let Laura Loomer talk over everybody the whole time, including him. Dave was being respectful for 90% of it until the end when he clearly got frustrated. And he just shut her down at the end. Not what I said, shut up. I'm going to continue. Like it was really entertaining. And that last thing I'll say, and then we can watch those clips, is that I almost stopped watching it about 2 or 3 times out of frustration for him.
I did.
I'm like, I can't even watch this right now until it got clear that he was like, okay, decorum's over. She doesn't even know how to do this.
I missed that part. I gave
bad.
up before that. I am 100% comfortable in admitting that.
I started watching it when you tweeted out.
I did exactly what fucking Shane Gillis jokes about in terms of his dad with Fox News. I watched until I was too angry to continue watching.
Exactly.
And then I just got up and said, all right, I quit. That's it. No more. I'm fucking done.
Oh man, there are 2 things that there's parts that are I almost feel like I have to go over this whole thing, but it'll be like a 5-hour show. But the things like, for instance, when he brings up the stated objective reality from Netanyahu's mouth that's covered by Israeli media in Times of Israel, Haaretz, everything, that is that Netanyahu propped up Hamas. He says this at a passing point to get to something else. And she clearly begins to push back. Oh, where'd you hear that from? And he already cited where he heard it from. But the point was that she didn't know that or was willing to push back on it until he was like, you really don't know that? It's like and she goes, no, I didn't say that. It was she's just in a dishonest place in the argument where you can tell that she had no idea what that was and pushed back on it the entire time. And 90% of the time she would state something verbatim. He would dispute it. And then her next point would be like, I didn't say that. Like,
Well, she even got tripped up like when asked about her going to Israel and then being asked if she'd went to like other Middle Eastern. I think this might be I don't have the clips named or anything. I might even have what you're talking about. I don't know exactly. So we're all going to be surprised.
Many times. I've been to Israel about 6 times. And prior to COVID, I used to, there was a group called the United West. Yeah. And, I'm a Zionist and I'm a proud Zionist. I don't care who that offends either. I'm proud to be Jewish. I'm proud to support Israel. And I'm proud to be a Zionist. And I don't give a damn who that offends either. I know there's people out there that want to use the word Zionist like it's some kind of dirty word. But I firmly stand against that. And I used to lead a group of people. They were both Jews and Christians, Christian Zionists. And we would take a border security trip every single year. And we would teach American Zionists, a lot of evangelicals, Christians and Jews, and we would teach them about border security. And we would go to the Lebanon border. We went to the Gaza border, and we would show people the importance of walls. And this was even before President Trump was first elected. This was in 2015, 2016. And I continue doing this all throughout the Trump administration as well. And a lot of people don't know this, but a lot of the Israeli designer of the wall on the border between Israel and Gaza was actually contacted by the Trump administration, and his guidance was sought in terms of how to design the structure for the United States border wall.
Have you been to any Middle Eastern countries other than Israel?
Yeah, I've been to the UAE. And I have, let's see, where else have I been? I try not to go, honestly. I mean, I don't really like going to Muslim countries, I'll be honest with you.
Have you been to Israel?
I don't have a
Muslim
desire
countries
to go
or
to
any
Muslim
Arab countries? Have you been?
Wait, what is the point of this? I mean, 9 times out of 10, that guy inserted his point and it derailed the actual conversation. There's moments where these people were actually like not debating because it was yelling back and forth. Remember what I said yesterday? As long as they don't have a structured debate and they don't let them yell over each other, it's exactly what happened. The point is that there would be a moment where Dave would be like ready to just annihilate what she said. And he would stick in and be like, let's go back to the one thing he's been keeping in his mind for 4 minutes while they were talking, because he wants to be the one making a point. It was obnoxious. Like, I just have to be honest about that. But like for instance, he made a point about, well, okay, so the moderator inserts the point that the Wall Street Journal proved that Al-Shifa Hospital is the command center of Hamas, which, first of all, because Wall Street Journal asserts something that Israel said does not mean that's proven. But to these people, apparently, if Wall Street Journal says it, it's real. That's ridiculous. But the point is that we can prove that they are lying about what's going on there. And I just covered yesterday that Al-Shifa, what's underneath the hospital, was built by Israel. Post 1983, revealed at least in 2005. I mean, it's a fact. It's on Wikipedia, and that doesn't mean it's a fact because it's there, but it is a fact, and you can prove this. And so it's all these weird anomalies. But the point was, he starts talking about how they bombed, and he doesn't say exactly the location, but he says Israel bombed 400 people to get one Hamas commander. Now, I'm willing to bet both of you know what I'm talking about, or what he was talking about, without saying where it is. Would you? Right. I don't want to put you on the spot, but you know what location that is?
The exact location, but
the Jabalia refugee camp.
Camp. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's a very public discussion, and we immersed in it, right? But so he says that she, who's supposed to be immersed in this topic, immediately goes, "But he just said it was only under the hospital." She didn't even know what he was talking about. And it took for another 5 minutes for him to be able to come back and reassert that, because the moderator jumped in and redirected another direction, whether he knew it or not. My point is to repeatedly show that she doesn't know what she's talking. She's immersed in the talking points from Israel, not the actual dynamic of the situation.
What you're talking about, because this one clip I have, she's talking about what's under the hospital. I think I have what you're talking about.
We'll do it. And I'm gonna go ahead. Sorry.
Like a 3-minute long clip.
Well, then let me say this one thing then. That I'm going to talk about today, an important discussion about what they're claiming to be finding in this hospital, and it will make you guys laugh.
I need someone to send me a Call of Duty soldier in 4K disappearing over a weapons cache. I need that video so I can make an edit. Then I'll send it to Ryan.
Dude, I mean, look, I'm usually one that's going to be like, we shouldn't downplay, but it's that stupid, right? What they're doing right now is comical, it's cartoonish, it's ridiculous. And I mean, it's pointing at baby bottles and things that are benign outside of their contextual covering of it. But it's the whole thing. What they're finding right now has already been shown to be false. They've already deleted one of their videos. They're ultimately lying about what they're seeing, and the claims they made aren't even being backed up. And what
I love the laptop part.
Yeah, but even if what they found is what they claim was Hamas's, what, 11 guns and some ammo. That's what you killed all these people for? Like, it's crazy. Anyway,
I tweeted out their fucking sheriff's department weed bust where it's the baggie and a pipe and it's like 8 guys and 3 dogs standing around looking hard. They're the IDF's version of that. And I'm like, dude, they're not doing this because they're retards. They're doing it because they think we're all retards. And just take that bit in because
the calendar.
nobody. Yeah.
I mean, seriously, or what Chris just said, like the computer or the
At
it's
first,
just
they have
dumb.
it blurred out on the first video they dropped,
Right.
but then it's like what they're talking about. That chick was Facebooking. And
That
it's like
too.
it
October
looks like
12th.
her Facebook is pulled up on the thing. Like, was she
Seriously,
just sitting there sending out Facebooks before?
Also, she was an IDF member. Like, that doesn't fucking matter now. Like, so that means she's a military target, and it's like it's just so ridiculous this game that they're playing, and they're getting destroyed. Their own propaganda is getting annihilated, and nobody's buying it. Not even international groups, because it's so childishly wrong. People are telling me, I don't read Arabic, but just the fact that they'd point at a calendar and be like, this proves. People are telling me that doesn't even say what they're saying it does. It says the weeks, the day of the week. But even if it really was just a calendar they wrote, our operation. It's like, so what does that ultimately prove other than this is something we already know happened, that Hamas carried out an operation against them? What they're trying to instill is this terrifying ISIS-level command center.
That everybody's involved in it.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Now, apparently the UN too. And I'm no fan of the UN.
They're trying to convey, like, I mean, they have it up on calendars that Palestinians, everybody's in on it, that they fucking, like, it is their terror group, dude. We've got
when you ask a 4-year-old Palestinian kid what he wants for his birthday, that Palestinian kid says rockets for Hamas. That's what they want everyone to believe.
Right. Yeah. Right. Somebody just shared it was Dan Cohen, by the way, who I greatly respect, shared one of many, which, I mean, Abby Martin's gone over this in the past, a photo from a recently posted, publicly displayed image of an Israeli woman with her children dressed in like military uniforms holding signs in Hebrew that say F them. I don't know why. We're on AM Wake Up. Fuck them. Go ahead and hit the bell. No, so the point is that his point is
Thursday fucks don't count for the contest.
But they're showing that they're training them to have that perception, which is the same thing they keep trying to argue. Laura Loomer made this argument during the debate, which is not what it was. That they're every single one of them trained to the same thing. It's just like this broad stroke ignorant argument. Like, so every baby,
like I was saying with the election thing, like
it's not true.
The people elected Hamas. I don't know how fucking true that is.
It's
but
not.
like,
I could tell you,
this is the people that argue. Well, Hamas was elected. The people wanted Hamas are the same people that argue that the elections were fucking stolen from Trump. This is what I'm seeing the pattern.
Right, but the point would be that if, like a Democrat, for example, who is on the side of Israel at this point, by that argument, then you're legally responsible for anything that our government has done. And this is what Dave made the point very clearly in the argument. And it's absurd,
but they're wording it like, they're flipping it. They are the ones who are telling people in America their platforms built off the elections were fucking stolen, right? But then they're telling you that, hey, bombing Gaza and the Palestinians, they voted for Hamas. We have the polls. We have the elections. They totally legit.
Sure.
Now, Americans, they're
Joe
not
Biden
legit
is
at all.
an illegitimate president. And sure, I guess by my own logic, that would make anything that Joe Biden does my responsibility. But we're going to casually ignore that for the sake of genocide.
Right.
Like I said, there is no fucking we.
Right. But so, Chris, what you're suggesting there, I think, if I understand it, is that the election, we should be questioning whether that election itself was fraudulent.
In my opinion,
I said the same
if you
thing.
look at all the other elections, but the people that are pushing that straw man of, look, the people elect for them, the people are fucking terrorists, obviously. They're the ones. Look, the polls say they fucking wanted them. These are the same people that used their fucking platform to scream the election was stolen from Donald Trump. How can you fucking say the election was stolen from Donald Trump, but in Gaza, legit?
Right. Well, at least we should ask whether or not it's possible that it could have been, and that's. But the point is, the real main point is that Hamas in 2006 was elected, and I'm glad you bring it up because I've said the same thing. We're going to believe that Israel, that all the way up until then, has been calling everybody their terrorists, but then they're going to go, okay, this year you guys can vote and we'll respect it. It's like, that's pretty stupid, especially since they're the ones on the record saying they put Hamas there to create the kind of division they could use to keep these people down. But hold on, my point is that Hamas, and a lot of people know this, but in case they don't, 2006 is when they were elected. Right. The argument then that everybody voted for them is so stupid because that means that the people today were 1 year old when that was happening. How did they vote for him exactly? Right. And that's on top of the fact that it was a vote with more than one group. So a lot of them voted for Fatah. So that's the other point of it. That's a U.S. backed entity. So now we have this divide and they tried to split them between the West Bank and Palestine, which was the stated purpose. So all of this just doesn't matter to people like Loomer that they just all voted for them and they're all terrorists. She just
do the shit out of that. So yeah, the elections over there are probably someone should, they're probably shady. The people who are fucking pushing that straw man that, well, the people elected for them, like, fuck that shit. Like, how can anybody even listen to you? Your whole platform was like, the shit's fucking stolen from us. Trump's the real fucking blah, blah, blah. But and I didn't even know that they weren't allowed to vote until 2000, what you said, 2006?
Well, no, I mean, here's what we have to understand. This is an occupied territory. Not Gaza was occupied before. Just because they pull back out and allow them to have this in open air prison, it's still considered by international law. It's a lie. It's not even an illusion. Anybody with a brain can see that they're still within an occupied territory. They just gave them a prison within that occupied territory, right? So it's crazy to think.
Well, that's what Laura was trying to argue. Laura was trying to argue they get to go. Well, no, that they give them visas or whatever so they can go to work, and the people that go to work.
Look, that's not some, and even them. If you actually listen to these people, they're treated as they will openly state as not just second. They are not even. They're not allowed to vote. They're not allowed to engage in this process. And they, as Netanyahu has said, this is the state for the Jews alone. He stated that publicly. She just doesn't seem to be aware or care about things he publicly says in Israel. She's arguing to the U.S. audience about what we're supposed to think Israel is. That's what she does. But so my point is, if you're inside of this territory, let's just pretend everything she said was true, that it's this bastion of freedom for all Arabs that want to work with Israel and they have visas and back and forth. Okay, that doesn't change the static reality that you're inside of an area that Israel controls. They don't have a seaport. They don't have an air force. They don't have everything that goes through is filtered through Israel, including the fact that Gaza is inside that area. They don't control the border crossings. They don't control the entry. They don't control the water, the food, the electricity. They don't. So the bottom line is it's still an illusion, as you said, in regard to that point. But they don't care about that. They want to pretend like we can, and this is the point Dave kept making, which she would never respond to. Well, 2 points, really. One is if you can prove that we did, that they influenced, armed, supported Hamas, and then on the record stated that, not publicly, but now it's become public, that they do this in order to undermine the freedom of these people they outwardly say they want to give freedom for, right? Or get to. The point would be right there that you can't take any of this seriously. You can't pretend that we allowed them to have their area and they screwed it up. You made sure it didn't work, and that's on the record. The other part is, how are we going to pretend that we're supposed to call these all barbarian monsters because they voted for Hamas or support Islam, while Dave repeatedly stated, and we all know, that our governments, both Israel and the United States, has over the process of decades armed, funded, and supported the most radical elements of Islam over and over, and even stated that this is for a strategic purpose. He ruined her with that argument. She never responded to it because it makes her look ridiculous, and even brought it around and said, okay, so you're voting for Trump. He armed Saudi Arabia, the most extreme element of this topic. How do you support that? And she was just completely spun out by it. It's crazy how one-sided these arguments are.
Next, we have a clip from the Mel K show and her interview with Derrick Broze.
To the Mel K show. My guest today is doing more, in my opinion, than almost anyone out there I've seen in terms of being on the front lines on many different battles. We are fighting for freedom and truth and liberty. And he is Derrick Broze. Thank you for joining me, sir. You talk a lot about the technocracy, and I think people don't understand what that means. what they're saying when we're talking about that they want a technocracy, a technocratic, totalitarian, globalist, takeover, Agenda 2030 being that, along with all its spokes. So you talk a lot about this. I'm surprised that the people that created a lot of it at MIT are having you come to speak about it, but they are, and I think that's a great sign. So if you could just talk about what you're speaking about at MIT and kind of explain to people what we are talking about when we talk about this technocracy and what is the danger to all of us, and not just in America. America's kind of on the front lines for the rest of the world. If they can pull it off here, the rest of the world's got basically no chance of not having it happen.
I agree, and the thing is, they're already testing it in other nations. There's other nations, small nations like Estonia. If you look them up, they're one of the first all digital nations that have already been kind of prepped for this. And then, of course, we've seen over the years places like Switzerland and Sweden are already familiar with the chips in the hands to get into work and stuff. So there are some parts of Europe that have already accepted these agendas, and not in the full. They might not see the full picture of where it's going, but they're like, oh yeah, I get into work, it's convenient. But yeah, when it comes to technocracy is a political movement that first emerged in the 1920s in the United States and Canada. And it was popular from 1920s to about 1950s, mid 1950s. It was part of the broader progressive movement, but it was a little more specific, and that the Howard Scott, who's one of the gentlemen who first promoted it, and a few other guys who founded Technocracy Inc., they were all involved at Columbia University studying out of the progressive roots of government managing, our lives. They were thinking, well, how could this be applied when it comes to technology? At that time, 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, people understood that there were going to be machines. We were starting to build cars, and they had this idea of what a computer would be, but we didn't have personal computers. Obviously, you had computers the size of walls. Right. Still, nonetheless, there were philosophers and kind of forward-thinking people who knew machines were going to shape our society. They didn't have the terms artificial intelligence yet, AI, but they knew machines could be used, and we might be able to create a utopian society doing so. And so this was the kind of mindset of the technocrats, where they thought if they could have what Howard Scott called the technocrat king at the top of what he called the technate, which I call the technocratic state, is just this kind of massive operation, geographic area that they would micromanage through the machines. And the idea would be that the machines, or more currently the AI, the algorithm, would tell them this area of town needs this amount of food to be most productive and happy, etc. And so it would allocate and micromanage all resources. We're talking about resource control, etc. But of course, this is promoted for the good of society. This would, they would be able to make sure that there's no hunger, there's no starvation. And then a lot of people bought into the idea because, for one, the idea that they were promoting was, let's get rid of the politicians, let's get rid of the businessmen. And a lot of people like that. You're like, yeah, hey, corporations, businessmen are ruining things. The Rockefellers, for example. Right. And yeah, government is screwing things up. So what else you got? Well, their idea was the technocrats, or the experts. So the experts wielding the technological tools, the AI, the machines, would micromanage and run society, and the rest of us would kind of just be the workers who would be at the whim of the technocrat king and his advisors and such. And so this is really the vision that the technocrats had. And as I said, it sort of went underground for a little while, but in the 70s, you have a man named Zbigniew Brzezinski, who is a advisor to Obama, as well as nearly every single president during his kind of career. And until his death, he was also the guy responsible for helping start Al-Qaeda and arming the Afghans, and just a lot of history there. Well, he wrote a book called The Technotronic Era, America Between Two Ages, that also kind of, he calls it technotronic instead of technocratic, but it's the same thing. And in his vision, he's even more explicit, that there would be a world police state, that there would be, they make it clear that choice would have to go, individual choices. They want to be able to control prices and management. But again, it's all utopian. It's going to be for the benefit. And this is, of course, what we're hearing today in the name of climate change, that if we can allow these people to digitize our entire world and tokenize everything and put sensors on everything, the Internet of Things, the Internet of Bodies, the Internet of Humans, then they'll know where everything's at all times, how much money we're spending, what we're doing. And through that knowledge, they will be able to fulfill the technocrat dream of knowing, okay, this area of the world or the planet or the state or whatever needs this much resources, and there's too much carbon over here, so you guys can't drive this week, and just a totally completely micromanaged society, of course, with AI at the top of it. And in the vision of the technocrats, they believe there will be a technocrat king or his council at the top helping to run such things. So this is very much the, whether people are familiar with the philosophy or not, you're familiar with the dictates of it. Because if you've heard the phrase trust the experts the last couple of years, that comes right from a technocratic mindset. I mean, this is our betters, the experts, the Bill Gates and the Elon Musks and the Bezos and the Faucis of the world and the Peter Hotezes. They're so educated and smarter than us. We need to just wait for them to hand things down. And of course, we're moving into a world that's being promoted by the United Nations, the World Economic Forum. Everybody needs a digital ID card. We need to digitize everything. And so these two things kind of converging, the digitization of our world, the technocratic philosophy coming back in full swing, I think it's becoming clear that this is really what it's about. And now they have made it even more clear in the recent months and really the last couple of years that climate change is now a big part of where things are going. Of course, they might play the pandemic card again if it's useful for them, but for the most part, climate change is becoming the kind of central face of this technocratic tyranny.
The narrative is falling apart, but as it does, there's so much of this fraudulent disinformation, misinformation, censorship coming from the globalists. And what we need to do is be focused on the facts, cut through everything, be discerning, and get it first and foremost out there to everyone. It is important that you know what is going on. Censorship is getting nuts. You guys know it. There's accounts all over the place that are fake, that are not me. I know you guys send me emails and I really appreciate it. And you report it, and it's on Telegram and Instagram and Twitter, and they're not me. So I'm super excited to announce We the People with Mel K. Be the first to join. It's a VIP community, just you and me behind a paywall, no trolls, no nothing. We get to know each other. I will give you the facts first. I break a lot of stories a long time before other people. We can talk about past, present, future, history, what we're doing now, solutions for going forward, what 2024 is going to look like. I'm going to do breaking news, do a lot of deep dives. I'm going to bring that information to you guys first in a live Q&A every week. So please click the link below and join me over there. We are going to create a community that is censorship proof, it's cancel proof, it's truth, it's transparency, it's on the road to God, country, justice, everything that we want in one place. This is the most incredible, amazing time to be alive. As hard as it seems and as difficult as the battle has been for you guys and definitely for me, all I know is that we all are part of the solution. We are all involved and invested, and you guys have the passion that I have. So let's join together on live Q&As once a week with me, Mel K, we the people of the United States, taking back this nation. This is so exciting, guys. I've been dying to do this, and we finally got the technology right. So please join me. Click the link below. Can't wait to get started.
Next, we have a clip from Charlie Robinson and his interview with Makia Freeman.
Fortunately, how it starts, right? It feels like, oh boy, I mean, it feels like the pieces on the chessboard have been set up in advance, and they're just waiting for somebody to make this one move, and we've seen this move. So give us a little background on sort of the history of Hamas. I mean, not a full breakdown, but I mean, I think a lot of people that are coming into this topic make the assumption, and I'm not even really necessarily blaming them for making this assumption. They assume Israel is one team, Hamas is another team, that's the enemy team, and that they're fighting against each other. But when you dig into the founding of Hamas, I don't know if that's necessarily the case. It feels a little bit like controlled opposition. What's your take on how this thing started?
Yeah, it is like that. It is controlled opposition. There's a theme that runs through when you study these big superpowers, the British Empire, the US Empire, but also Zionism and Israel. I mean, since Israel's founding in 1948, it has committed a whole long list of crimes. We're talking about the way that it acquired nuclear weapons and nuclear secrets. It had a hand in the JFK assassination. Then it went on to basically every president really since JFK has been in Israel's pocket. Lyndon Johnson totally was. He was in charge during the USS Liberty, where Israel just blatantly attacked and killed Americans there. Then Israel had a huge hand in 9/11, and I could go on and on about it, but the point is that the Mossad and their intelligence services are very clever. They specialize in things like assassinations, false flag operations, and so they've learned how to kind of manipulate things. And one thing they've realized is that you need to have it works a lot better if there's controlled opposition, so that it looks like you're the victim when you're not. And so what happened with Hamas is that in 1987, Israel decided that they would help get Hamas off the ground by funding it, because they wanted a counterweight to the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO. And it became one of those things where it's a bit like a monster that they created that became out of control. But even though Hamas appears to be Israel's enemy, and I'm not excusing in any way what they did or did not do on October 7th, and we can get into that a little later. I think there's a lot of atrocity propaganda around it. There's a lot of exaggeration, but undoubtedly they did something, and I'm not excusing in any way the killing of civilians.
No, of course, no.
However, it does work to Israel's advantage to have an extreme organization like this, and we saw this happening, just 5, 6, 7 years ago during parts of the Syrian war, where there was ISIS running around the Middle East, right? When there's an extreme organization like that that's already very extreme and doing things, well, Israel can then exaggerate what they're doing. It can claim these guys are barbaric and extreme and they're horrible and like they're the enemy, they're pure evil, and then they can galvanize support. Netanyahu's, who's plagued by corruption scandals, he can galvanize support behind his government, and he can get the sympathy of all the West on his side and say, hey, we've got to fight these barbarians, right? So it actually really helps them to have an enemy like that. It's to their advantage. And Netanyahu was on record just in 2019 saying that if you care about stopping the Palestinians from achieving their own state, then you need to keep funding Hamas. I mean, he said this is just 4 years ago. So this is not something where they created in 1987 and it became out of control. I mean, this has been a deliberate strategy for them to fund an extreme organization like this, so that they then have an excuse to bomb Gaza, or to stop a Palestinian state, or to get sympathy from the West. It suits a lot of their agendas.
Yeah, and it feels it's got a very 9/11 feel to it, as well as this attack where it's like, oh, our defenses were down. I mean, we spend $1 trillion a year in the U.S. military, but we had all our planes elsewhere. We did mistakes were made, and they flew planes off course for an hour and nobody did anything about it. Oh boy, what a catastrophic lapse of our security forces. What bad luck, right? And then you see this with Israel, and they've got the most secure border in the world, and they don't, they know when anything's coming next to that border, but magically they just didn't see it, and there's this big gaping hole, and people and troops are running through and coming in, pouring in. The IDF doesn't respond for hours and hours, and if I didn't know any better, I would think that they allowed it to happen. A little problem, reaction, solution. Now, in the first World Trade Center, the one that didn't really go off very well, and I think it killed a couple people, they realized that they needed a big body count. If you want to pass sweeping legislation and really get the public on your side, and as you talked about, galvanizing the support behind Netanyahu or George W. Bush or whoever, you need a body count. You needed it in Oklahoma City, you needed it in 9/11, and you needed it in this event in Israel as well. And I have seen time and time again that the Israelis have zero problem sacrificing their own. They use their own country as a laboratory for the Pfizer shots, for the COVID shots. I mean, they straight up said that. Netanyahu, again, I think he's no friend to the Jewish people or the Israeli people, and I think he's a devious dude. And so I feel like it seems like a problem, reaction, solution, like allowed to happen, given the justification to now create the support that you need to wipe out the group. They've always wanted to do it. Is this right? I mean, they speak openly about how they want to destroy these people. And then it's like, almost like, what would you do if I broke through your wall, came into your country, started murdering all these women and children, kidnapping them and beheading people and ripping babies out of pregnant women and doing all stuff? What would you do to me? Israel's well, we would obliterate you. Exactly. So why would I do that? Why would I do that unless I was being made to do it? And it feels like it feels like a trap to me. It feels like this is being allowed to happen. When you saw this, knowing how secure that border is, what was your reaction?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense that this could have just happened, and this is a key question to ask. Whether when we look back in history at the false flag operations and the assassinations, there's always a group that's in power that actually has the control, has the power to call off the normal security arrangements. And so recall when JFK was in his limo and he was making that final turn, suddenly the secret security was called off. So who had the power to do that so that the assassins could take an open shot at him? It's 9/11. Who had the power to order things to stand down? I mean, Dick Cheney had some of the power, but there was a whole apparatus that was in place, that was basically diffusing, like cutting out the normal security protocols, so that the normal thing couldn't happen, so that this event could happen. So exactly the same thing was happening here, and there's already been some really brave Israeli former soldiers and intelligence people who've worked on the wall or on the fence, the Gaza area, and they know that there's no way this could have happened unless all these things were there were battalions that were moved to the West Bank instead of Gaza. There was a deliberate standing down of the normal security response. I mean, this fence is so high tech that apparently it can detect a cockroach moving. But even if you think that's an exaggeration, there are a number of Israelis who've worked on it who said it can easily detect a bird or a cat or a fox. So how the hell did a Palestinian tractor make it through? And even if somehow that happened, how the hell was there no response for 6 to 7 hours? I mean, there were Hamas people flying in on hang gliders, motorized hang gliders, for God's sake. I mean, when you look at what the technology and the money that Israel gets and the missiles, I mean, it shot a couple of hospitals just in the last few weeks. I've seen the footage of that. I mean, those missiles are going so fast. I mean, shooting someone on a hang glider is a joke. I mean, that should be like just an automatic thing that, but what's also staggering about this is that a number of reports have come out that the Israelis were involved in shooting the hostages. So when they finally did arrive after 6 or 7 hours, they came in and apparently they just shot a lot of everyone who was there, and they probably killed some Hamas militants, but they also killed some Israeli civilians who were meant to be hostages. And so, but of course, then they just blamed it all on Hamas. And so, and there was also recently a woman that was released by Hamas, and she looked like she was 80 or 90, and she actually shook hands with the Hamas soldier. And then she did an interview and basically said that Hamas treated her very kindly, and they gave her medical assistance and food and whatever she needed. And so when the Zionists control the Western mainstream media narrative, Israel has all these highly advanced tech companies that have software backdoors and all this. So they've got control of the media, and they're very good at controlling the narrative online. But yet we have these bits of information coming out that actually, maybe Hamas is not really as bad as what it's being painted, and there's just some things that don't really add up about the whole thing. It's really important, I think, when you're looking at this, to realize there's going to be a fog of war. There's going to be so much propaganda that we're inundated with, and it's hard to know what's real. And so it's important just the first few days and weeks when you're wading through this to realize so much of this could be propaganda and misinformation.
Yeah. And look, Israel they're great at the tech stuff. Their startups are almost unmatched in terms of security forces. Whitney Webb does great work on a lot of that stuff. You see that the ex-IDF soldiers, a lot of them will go into tech startups as well. They encourage them to do that. A lot of like Carbine and companies like that were formed by ex-IDF soldiers. And then you look at the board of directors, financed by Ehud Barak, financed by Jeffrey Epstein, financed by all these bad guys. And you start to go, oh, geez, I mean, this is supposed to be our closest ally in the Middle East. And yet, boy, I mean, we have some questions about that. We've got questions about the Dimona nuclear plant. We've got questions about the Liberty. We've got questions about 9/11. We've got questions about all kinds of things. And I am I'm very suspicious of Israel. And I think what's interesting is that, I'll tell you, they've done a great job of convincing people that an attack, a criticism, a verbal attack, not even a physical attack, or just a verbal criticism of Israel equals you hate Jewish people. They've done a masterful job of that. I mean, it's not it's not reality, but you have so many people that have found themselves in a situation where they are self-censoring just to be on the safe side, right? So they don't even want to say anything that might be misconstrued as criticism of Israel. Let them, especially if you work in certain industries, you work in the media, you work in Hollywood, you work in banking. I mean, God forbid you criticize Israel's response to anything. They'll run you out of town, make you do a dance, kick you out of college, shame you in a mobile billboard saying these people have been saying, and listen, I'm not going to go out there and participate in a rally where I say Hamas is like the good guys and this is great or anything. I don't like any of the killings and I don't like any of this stuff, but to pretend like Israel is somehow above reproach is laughable. They have been a terrorist organization as far as I am concerned, and I feel like a lot of the destabilization in the Middle East is due to Israel. What have you seen over the last couple of years? What's the response to the surrounding countries that have to share space with these with this country that has a very different ideology? I mean, are they ready for a war? Do they want a war, or do they just want to pretend like Israel doesn't exist?
Well, I mean, I think one of Israel's fundamental problems is that they want to have a Jewish state, and they feel like they were promised that. But if you actually go back and look at the Balfour Declaration, it actually says in the very wording of it that His Majesty's England looks favorably upon the creation of a Jewish state, provided that it doesn't discriminate or hurt or basically make things worse for the existing population there. But they kind of forgot about that part, and so they kind of just went in there and act like the colonial settlers. And right from the start, there was terrorist groups, Irgun, for example, that were just completely, genociding the Palestinians, wiping them out, taking their villages. I mean, so, Israel loves to say, well, Israel has the right to exist. But yes, but I mean, what about the Palestinians' right to exist? And how do you kind of justify a right to exist when you're basically forcibly taking the land of the people that are there and killing them? They've never resolved that question. And there's been lots of movements over the years where it seemed like peace might be close, and there was an Israeli prime minister who got kind of close, but then he was assassinated. That was Rabin. So, I think there are Israelis that are waking up to this and just, of course, there's going to be an emotional reaction in some of them of like wanting revenge, and that's understandable. But there's also a part of them that's like, if we keep attacking, we keep doing this is just going to go on, and it's already gone on for so long. The only way this is going to stop is if both sides just go, you know what, we actually really need to find a solution where we can both live side by side and stop attacking each other. Because every time one side attacks, then the other side feels like they need to get revenge. There's a new generation that gets born into that hears the horror stories or that sees has their family members disappear. And so then in their heart, they have the burning desire for revenge, and it just never ends.
Well, it doesn't help that the Mossad's motto is, by way of deception, thou shalt do war, right? And then you go, well, that doesn't sound good. And then you find out that the Mossad is involved in the creation of Hamas, and you go, by way of deception. Hang on a second. That would qualify as deception, right? To pretend that you were somebody else. It feels like the first war is the information war, right? The narrative war. Let's get control of the narrative. Let's make sure that everybody right off the bat knows how they're supposed to feel. You're supposed to be angry. This group over here, you're supposed to hate this group, and you're supposed to feel like you were you were attacked, and this was an unprovoked attack. And every time I hear these unprovoked attacks, it reminds me that this one here, it says unprovoked, and it reminds me of Ukraine and Russia, and Russia's unprovoked attack. Well, neither of these were really unprovoked attacks. I mean, you can only push these groups so far before they respond. And in the case of Russia and Ukraine was most definitely attacking them for 7 years. They were slaughtering people in this Russian, ethnically Russian region. So it's like, it wasn't exactly unprovoked. And so now here we are, we've got another, quote, unprovoked attack. And I wonder if we are, it seems like we're headed down the same path. Why would the Palestinians decide now, this month? Why would the Palestinians decide that now's the time to start a war with Israel? It doesn't seem to me that they are. Typically, you want to kind of gear up for a war, right? Get yourself ready, get the strategy together, get your weapons and tanks and generals and alliances and all these things built up. This seems like a region where they barely have drinking water. This is like if they were following Sun Tzu's Art of War instruction manual, this would not be the time for them to attack, and yet they did. Are we dealing with another one of these unprovoked attacks that actually is, in fact, a provoked attack?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'll talk about that in a sec. But just coming onto Hamas, this is something I actually talked about in a recent video where I don't feel like Hamas can really say that they're representing the Palestinian people, because they must have known that if they were to do this to Israel, Israel is just going to totally come in and want to absolutely exterminate and obliterate them, right? And so how does that help the Palestinian people in Gaza? It doesn't, because Israel really has no compunction, no scruples about bombing hospitals and killing civilians, none at all. And there's a huge percentage of Gaza. I read something like 65% of the population is under 24 years of age. Massive amount of children. Israel doesn't care. It'll kill the children it needs to try to achieve its objectives. So if Hamas had just taken a minute to really think about this, they must have realized this kind of help. So then that leads credence to the theory that perhaps Hamas is still being controlled, and it's maybe not controlled by Israel, but it doesn't seem to be representing the Palestinian people. Likewise, the Israeli government doesn't really seem to be representing the Israeli people. As you pointed out, they treated them like lab rats during the COVID scamdemic, and then we have the reports of the Israeli IDF, standing down for 6 or 7 hours, letting it happen, and then coming in and killing Israeli civilians anyway, and then blaming it on Hamas. So neither government on this side are really representing the people, and that's one of the tricks of this whole thing, is where you have common people around the world who have more in common with each other than their governments. And that happened in World War I with the French and the Germans. They were fighting each other in trenches, but they took a ceasefire, and then they were friends for during the ceasefire, singing Christmas carols or whatever. And then the next day, that's okay, we're going to go back into the trenches and shoot each other. It's crazy. But governments do this to divide populations and then denounce who isn't playing along with their country or their government as unpatriotic. And so this is just another trick to control people. But I like your point about the so-called unprovoked nature of it. And you're right. I mean, if you look at Ukraine, the whole thing that the US did and the whole build up to that, the 2014 coup, Vicky Nuland, the Zionist neocon, boasting that they'd pumped $5 billion into Ukraine to achieve that coup, the way that they got the legitimately elected president out, Yanukovych, and they put in their puppets. They got the Nazis and the neo-Nazis there into power. Then they started demonizing Russia. They started actually attacking the citizens, Russian-speaking citizens in the Donbass. So all of this had been going on for 8 years. And so people have to realize that things aren't black and white, and there's all these nuances. And actually, I read something that Putin said recently, which was interesting. I mean, I don't entirely agree with it, but I think I respect his point of view. And he said that he doesn't feel like Russia really started this war, that's why he called it a special military operation. And he believes the US started the war in 2014, and he's going in 8 years later with his limited military operation to finish the war. Now, I don't entirely agree with that, but that's a perspective, and I can see what he's saying. And I mean, it is a very difficult situation where you have a country that used to be a territory of yours, or and it still has Russian-speaking people, to see it basically siphoned off and then overtaken with Nazis and brought into the Western orbit. And then they're talking, that Zelensky was talking about nukes right before Russia went in. I mean, it's a very difficult thing to deal with when they're treating Russia and the Russian-speaking Ukrainians like that. I mean, it's obviously not unprovoked. Obviously not. Same thing here. I mean, Israel and the Palestinians don't have an equal relationship. It is a settler-settled or colonizer-colonized relationship, and so it is understandable that there are going to be frustrations and anger that boil out sometimes, because the Gazans are being denied basic human rights. I mean, access to water, electricity, and basic things like that. And it's incredibly difficult for them to live under those conditions in what's basically an open air surveillance prison.
Yeah. And isn't Netanyahu on the record saying, I want them at the very least functioning level I can get them at without it being like a war crime or something. He wants it very, very minimum.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. I mean, if you look at how the Israelis have treated them, there was a point at which they were controlling how much food went in, and they were calculating how many Gazans lived there and what their caloric requirements were. And then so they would deliberately limit the food, so they were getting just enough food to survive, but nothing more than that. I mean, this is the way that they've been treated. So I mean, of course, when you treat people like that, of course, there's going to be some people that are going to react violently. It's human nature.
Now let's take a look at this clip from James Corbett and James Evan Pilato with New World Next Week.
Welcome back to New World Next Week. I'm James Corbett of CorbettReport.com.
And I am James Evan Pilato of MediaMonarchy.com. We pride ourselves on great customer service, and you can't do that through a robot. We have got that good news story, plus the EID cometh. But first, San Francisco clears out the bums and builds the wall for Xi Jinping's visit. And Governor Newsom on Xi's visit said, I know folks say, oh, they're just cleaning up this place because all these fancy leaders are coming into town. That's true because it's true. So he said the loud part out loud, I guess. San Francisco frantically cleaned up its act, booted out the homeless, and threw up all kinds of security barriers ahead of Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit. He did attend the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in the Bay Area, APEC, where he met with President Biden for the first time in over a year. The Democrat-run city has erected steel security walls in the downtown area and booted out the vagrant tent dwellers for the communist ruler's visit. Biden, like his San Francisco liberal allies, campaigned heavily against walls, in particular Orange Man's barrier at the U.S.-Mexico border. San Francisco-based Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi and former mayor and current California Governor Gavin Newsom have also slammed the notion of walls. But photos showed central roads surrounded by steel barriers and sidewalks cleared of homeless people as the lawless city cleans up its act ahead of Xi's visit, after Chinese propaganda likened the fentanyl-infested metropolis to, quote, hell. And as if to make most favored nations point, news crew robbed at gunpoint while filming in San Francisco ahead of Xi Jinping Biden summit. There it is, James.
Womp womp. Well, as we are recording this, again, to the disclaimer, we're going to be 24 hours behind when you're seeing this, so we don't know how this whole summit ultimately will play out. As we are sitting here recording it, apparently there are reports of protesters clashing with riot police as thousands descend on San Francisco to shut down the APEC summit. So we'll see how that plays out. Perhaps similarly to how it played out in Canada in 1997 at the APEC summit, where protesters were protesting against the presence of people like Suharto from Indonesia. And you had the bizarre scene of Nardwar questioning Prime Minister Jean Chrétien about it and talking about the pepper spray that was being used on protesters and the infamous, for me, pepper, I put it on my plate, which Canadians in the crowd might remember, of a certain vintage anyway. Craziness. All that being said, we don't know how this is going to turn out, but let's put some things on the record. I think in contrast to the Chinese propaganda regurgitators of the Bricks as Savior 5D fantasist crowd, I don't think Xi Jinping is descending on the United States in a position of power come to dictate his terms. In fact, I would say this is quite the opposite. As evidenced, if by nothing else, in the fact that, hey, they're sitting there at the table with a representative from Taiwan, which is essentially one of the red lines of Chinese diplomacy. They never acknowledge the existence of Taiwan. The bone that they throw to the Chinese at APEC is that it's not Taiwan, it's Chinese Taipei. And they don't have an official government representative, they have a civilian representative. In this case, the 92-year-old head of a very, very powerful semiconductor firm. So, because of course, that's what Taiwan is, essentially. It's Airstrip 1? Well, no, I guess Airstrip 2 for the United States of America. So we'll see what develops from this. What I am thinking is that I think both Biden and Xi want a little bit of face saving and a little bit of room. I think they want to tone down the the bellicose World War III type rhetoric to give themselves some breathing space. Let's not forget, the Chi-Coms are not exactly in the greatest position they've ever been in, as evidenced by the bottom falling out of their housing market, putting economic pressure on them, high youth unemployment, a rising middle class that now needs to be placated, all of which I think came into sort of focus, what was it, a year and a half ago? When we had those protests that were being largely led by students, I think, against the zero COVID lockdown insanity nonsense that China was still attempting to do at that point. They had to back off because the protests were getting too intense and they didn't want to start massacring people and what have you. So I don't think they're bargaining from a position of power and strength here. We'll have to see what develops out of this. I don't think there's going to be any sort of like big breakthrough, some amazing agreement or accord or anything. But the fact that they are sort of around the table and everybody's at least talking to each other is a sign that they might be trying to simmer things down a little bit. Of course, who is not there? Of course, Putin is not there, as he wasn't there last year either at the APEC summit, as he's no longer a welcome guest. And I suppose they'd probably try to arrest him for the ICC prosecution war crimes, right? So anyway, all that being said, the media monarchy link to all of this is that apparently Biden and Xi were having their little pre-APEC chinwag shindig at the Filoli estate, which you will recognize as the estate that was the face of Dynasty, the Dynasty TV series. So put that in your little media monarchy pipe and smoke it. I don't know what that means, but anyway, there you go.
I mean, I would imagine if Biden can make it through the summit without literally falling down or falling all over the place, I would imagine they would chalk it up as a bit of a success. So that's probably the exteriors that they used for the establishing shots and the opening sequence of Dynasty. Never watched a ton of Dynasty. Can we, speaking of watching stuff, include the Nardwuar link in our show notes?
Let's do it.
Awesome. That's how we get going on New World Next Week, episode 535. Our second story this week, EU Parliament agrees on digital ID introduction and pro-censorship chief suggests integrating it with CBDCs. What an amazing idea. Grabbing this from the fine folks at reclaimthenet.org, the European Parliament and the bloc's member countries have reached a provisional deal on the digital ID framework, and now EU Commissioner for Internal Market Thierry Breton is reported as suggesting that central bank digital currency integration should follow. The provisional agreement on what's known as the EID, European Digital Identity Regulation, is being presented by the EU Council that worked on the agreement together with the European Parliament as a safe and trusted option, safe and effective, and also one that protects democratic rights and values. Opponents like Dutch EP member Rob Roos took to X to announce the news and brand it as very bad. The reason, according to Roos, that is in the process of striking a deal, the two EU institutions ignored all the privacy experts and security specialists. Commissioner Breton wasted no time, perhaps on purpose, building on a momentum that was no doubt difficult to get going to say that now there is a digital ID wallet. We have to put something in it. The MEP sees his comments as suggesting that Breton is talking about a link between EID and future CBDCs. In his own post on X, Breton was in a positively celebratory mood, congratulating those who worked on this outcome, calling it a giant step and a world premiere. And one that, according to him, guarantees top levels of security and privacy not guaranteed, while offering citizens of EU countries a secured e-identity for their lifetime. Lowering amount of time, though that may be. Roos, however, believes that something can still be done about this, and the EP is yet to vote on the agreement and is urging citizens to contact their MEPs, tell them they oppose the looming regulation, and ask them to vote against. Please. Only last week, reports said that as many as 300 scientists and security experts and researchers all agreed that something should be done about EU's ID scheme, namely that the bloc should rethink its plans. Specifically referring to the EIDAS regulation, which should allow for mutual recognition of EID schemes across the EU, these experts said, as proposed in its current form, will not result in adequate technology safeguards for citizens and businesses as intended. In fact, it will very likely result in less security for all. This particularly refers to the newest version of EIDAS, radically expanding the ability of governments to surveil both their own citizens and residents across the EU by providing them with the technical means to intercept encrypted web traffic, as well as undermining the existing oversight mechanisms relied on by European citizens. James, the EID cometh, or is the EID here?
Well, I mean, it's here in concept anyway, and now they're
Why not
just
both?
gonna. They're just going to
Why
have
not
to.
both?
Yeah, exactly. They're just going to have to roll it out for the public's sake at this point. You know, it's almost as if who put the digital ID on their bingo card for 2023, huh? Oh, wait. Yeah, I did. Specifically because this is the linchpin of the entire globalist system. This is, once they get the digital ID, everything else falls into place. As they say, now that we have this ID, you got to put something in it. Well, okay, CBDCs and everything else, social credit, here it comes. It's the digital ID is going to be the linchpin for this system. And again, you don't have to be some kind of great prognosticator to be able to see this or scry the tea leaves. They're telling you about this. They've told you for years. Bill Gates has gone up and talked about the wonders of digital identification and how it will be a great thing for the future and blah, blah, blah. And here we are in 2023, and the 50 in 5 campaign is an agenda concocted by a coalition of unelected globalists to accelerate technocratic control through digital ID, CBDC, and massive data sharing. The United Nations, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and partners of the Rockefeller Foundation are launching the 50 in 5 campaign to accelerate digital ID, digital payments, and data sharing rollouts in 50 countries under the umbrella of Digital Public Infrastructure, DPI, by 2028. So keep that magic acronym in mind. You're going to be hearing more about it in the coming years, as of course they test it out in those poor African countries, whatever. Here's our little test guinea pigs, and make sure we have all the kinks out of the system, and then DPI for everyone. Yay! Digital public infrastructure. And of course they're going to sell this to the public as the wonderful, now you can harness all the benefits and goodness of all of the great things that you'll get from government, and maybe they'll throw you a UBI carrot and whatever else, but just don't ever think about the stick of the complete debanking, demonetization that can take place with the flick of a switch under this DPI that they're going to give from the heavens. And by the way, in a completely and totally unrelated note here that has nothing to do with anything else, Aadhaar data leak. Personal data of 815 million Indians on sale on the dark web. Oh, that's right. Remember the biggest biometric database ever constructed in the history of the planet by the Indian government, with the big thumbs up from Bill Gates, of course, and how they're now trying to link that to your tax filings so that it all becomes this great big slave computer state. Well, guess what? Yeah, they just had a huge data leak, and now apparently the personal data of 815 million Indians is out for sale on the dark web. What could possibly go wrong with the digital ID, huh?
Now that we've got all these cages, we've got to put something in them. So, I mean, that's the sneaky thing, James. The 50 in 5. I was talking about this on the Morning Monarchy the other day. We all get fixated on 2030, Agenda 21, 2030. Crap, they did it 2 years early. That's how those moves may go. And again, to access all the amazing benefits of government, like paying them the protection money so they don't come destroy your business. Again, it would be better if we just had open Italian mafia. But maybe we can. There's the sigh. The good news. The New World Next Week sigh. Before we get to some good news. Now, there have been some episodes in the past, James, that were really close to Thanksgiving, and we have done complete good news episodes. Things might be a little dire for that this year, but our third segment is all good news as we give thanks for some good news. Our first one, Booth's Supermarkets to ditch self-checkouts in North of England stores. Some people love the speed and efficiency of supermarket self-checkouts, but then there's the not recognizing your bag, the unexpected item in bagging area, the surprising item on the scale, the point-blank refusal to scan something, the constant coupon confusion, and that's all before the long wait to get your alcohol approved. I was actually talking about this a little bit on the morning show, James. Those touch screens, I think if you touch the top right-hand corner, you access the user interface where the employee comes and punches in their secret code. If you watch that employee, you might be able to learn their secret code and at the very least mess up the whole self-checkout system. That's if you've got some time to waste. Booths, see? Life hacks from the Media Monarchy Kingdom. I messed with it a little bit at the Kroger grocery store. Booths, a high-end Northern England supermarket chain, is siding with the dislikers and has announced it's removing self-checkers from the majority of its stores. We're not great fans of self-checkouts, Booths managing director Nigel Murray told The Grocer. We pride ourselves on great customer service, and you can't do that through a robot. The chain is believed to be the first in the UK to go back to fully staffed tills and is swimming against the machine's tide, which has led to more big supermarkets adding trolley self-service bays to existing basket self-service and self-scan. That's very telling because that's essentially what the public have done. Oh, I scanned myself. I gave it away. All of this basically means fewer tills staffed by human beings, which, as many argue, might be the only social interaction of the day for a lot of people who live alone, which is another important part of this New World Order beast system. In other good news, West Antarctica temperature falls 2 degrees Celsius in 20 years. Grabbing this from What's Up With That. Again, everything we say, always down in the show notes. The continent of Antarctica is a difficult hunting ground for climate apocalypse fanatics since there's been barely any overall warming for the last 70 years. The exception is West Antarctica, where there's been some local climate variation, possibly helped by significant geothermal activity. Don't expect to see reported in mainstream media some startling new evidence showing significant cooling in West Antarctica starting in the early 1990s, with temperatures falling by 0.93 Celsius each decade from 99 to 2018, a total of 2 degrees over that 20 years. In a paper published by the American Meteorological Society, a group of international scientists note the statistically significant rate of temperature decline. In other weather news, Sahara expert says the desert is shrinking and calls alarmist tipping points complete nonsense. This from No Tricks Zone. Austrian AUF1 posted a video interview with a prominent German geologist and Sahara expert, Dr. Stefan Kropellen. He's an award-winning geologist, climate researcher, University of Cologne, specializes in studying Eastern Sahara Desert and its climatic history. He's been doing it for 40 years. In the Off1 interview, Dr. Kropellen contradicts the alarmist claims of growing deserts and rapidly approaching climate tipping points. He says that already in the late 1980s, rains had begun spreading into northern Sudan and have since indeed developed into a trend. Since then, rains have increased and vegetation has spread northwards. The desert is shrinking. It's not growing. And finally, from ITV, nearly 1,000 ULEZ cameras damaged or stolen in the last 7 months. I believe we have mentioned this pretty recently, and these might be updated numbers. Nearly 1,000 ultra-low emission zone cameras have been damaged or stolen in the past 7 months, the Metropolitan Pigs have said. Since April Fool's Day, 767 cameras have been damaged, while another 220 ULEZ cameras were stolen. I think people are even sort of pioneering new ways of destruction in this. It's pretty amazing. Five people arrested over the criminal damage relating to ULEZ cameras since the London mayor announced the expansion of the clean air zone earlier this year. 3 people have been charged, one of whom had their case dropped, and 2 arrested and bailed. I'm sure Jimmy Kimmel probably paid their bail. The low emission zone imposes limitations on vehicle emissions with the aim of reducing pollution. Vehicles which don't meet the standards incur a daily charge of £12.50 in the capital, and the fine for failing to pay is another £180. The scheme was expanded to outer London boroughs on August 31st by Sadiq Khan, despite legal challenges from local councils and widespread protests. An anti-ULEZ Facebook group with more than 40,000 members who are definitely on a list now, urging people to refuse to pay the $12.50 daily fee for non-compliant vehicles, as well as celebrating the vandalism of enforcement cameras. That is some good news this week, James.
All right. Well, that's some good news. Okay, let's put things in perspective. With regards to the ULEZ camera story, let me put it on the record for the benefit of the AI transcription bots that are listening into everything that we say. I do not support what you guys are doing. I do not like to see that type of vandalism taking place. And I don't want anybody tampering with those self-checkout monitors in the way that you just prescribed in great detail there, Pilato. I am not on board with that. Okay, now that we have that transcription out of the way, with regards to the Booth story, of course, I am against the automatic checkout, the dehumanization of the public space that is steeping us further and further into this electronic matrix. But even beyond that, even just not even thinking about that aspect of it, I just hate having to use those stupid devices that, as they say, there's always something wrong. Every single time I end up having to call for help anyway because it doesn't work. I avoid it at all costs. I will go out of my way. I will wait in a 15-person lineup for an hour and a half to avoid those stupid things just because of the inconvenience of them. Anyway, so I hope people, and again, this is part of what we were talking about last week with regards to if you don't use it, you lose it. If you don't make the point of having the human-to-human interaction, then they're eventually going to phase out the human-to-human interaction. And I always want to just say to the workers there, do you know you're just training your replacements? Are you happy with this? You guys should be vandalizing this stuff. Anyway, no one should be vandalizing this stuff. And with regards to the climate stories, you're not going to be reading this in the nightly news. They're not going to be blasting headlines about, oh my God, the world's getting greener and things are cooling off and oh my God. No, because that doesn't fit their narrative. So you will never hear about it. And so that should just, of course, and that's very, very apparent when it comes to the climate stories. You will never, ever, ever, ever hear a climate story that goes against the alarmist narrative because they don't want you to hear it. But think about that just generally applied. I think it's a point that we've made before, but we should make it here again explicitly since this is going to be our good news segment for the year, I guess. Let's make it here. You don't hear about good news because good news doesn't sell. Good news doesn't get people to click. Good news does not get people excited. In fact, our entire concept of news is essentially bad things that happen today. And because we do not have a framework for understanding positive developments, things that are good, celebrating the best in humanity, we never do it. And if somebody comes along and says, hey, did you hear the news today? Something good happened. You're like, what the? No. No, I heard there was an earthquake over here. There was some sort of bombing over here. That's news. So I think maybe we should, from time to time, at the very least, reset our framework of what news even is. And on that note, happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thanks again for tuning into another episode of the Independent Review. I will leave you with one final clip from Carey Wedler that she just posted. Hope to see you all next week.
My heart hurts for the victims of the October 7th attacks and the victims of the Israeli government's response. Looks like we've got another terrorist-loving anti-Semite. I'm actually Jewish on the side that counts in traditional Judaism. So you're a self-hating Jew? No, but I would like to explain why the state of Israel has no right to exist, and it has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. Why? Because Israel's been bombing Gaza. We are defending ourselves. Those Palestinian savages always started. Actually, this modern conflict really kicked off after some European Jews convinced the British Empire to support the creation of a Jewish nation in the Middle East. Like I said, self-hating Jew. Anti-Semitism is definitely a real thing. I've had it directed at me many times. It's ultimately a negative, hateful collectivization of an entire group of people, right? Yes, and it's evil. So isn't it also evil to collectivize other groups of humans? And they aren't human. They're terrorist animals hell-bent on destroying us. Terrorists like Hamas. Exactly. The group Israel helped create to try to establish more control in the region? You're lying. Bad Jew. Hamas is a terrorist organization because they kill civilians to achieve political objectives, right? You're finally getting it. So what is destroying refugee camps, schools, and news buildings in the name of defending the state of Israel? And what about groups like Lehi and Irgun, which brazenly murdered civilians in their efforts to carve out the region for Jews? They had no choice. People wouldn't respect their legitimacy, dignity, and existence. And what do you call treating human beings like cattle for decades and bombing them when a small subsection of them, like Hamas, attacks? Palestinians elected Hamas. There are no innocent Palestinians. Did they elect Hamas? Or did Hamas win a plurality of votes, not a majority, and without all of the people voting in 2006, and then seize power anyway the following year? Did the children of Gaza, who now make up nearly half the population, vote for Hamas as infants or before they were born? Those kids are gonna grow up to be terrorists anyway. Why do you hate all Jews but look for every possible reason to defend Palestinians? They hate us for no other possible reason but our Judaism. I'm not talking about all Jews, but the Israeli government, which conflates itself with Judaism and Jews and then uses that as a shield for its inhumanity. Which brings me back to why the state of Israel has no right to exist. Do you not see the Star of David on the flag? They're fighting for you too, even though you're ungrateful. It's the sacred Jewish homeland, self-hater. It's also the Palestinians' home, yet you decry their alleged religious fanaticism at the exact same time you use your religion fused with government authority to justify seizing their homes and denying them basic human rights and killing them indiscriminately with the full force of the Israeli state. You don't think we deserve our own country after all we've suffered? My family died in the Holocaust. So did mine, as far as my family knows. And that's all the more reason to oppose the Israeli government's onslaught. Groups of people all around the world have suffered at the hands of violent governments and their henchmen, spurred on by people who believe in their authority. That doesn't mean other people should also suffer murderous fates at the hands of government, including one that claims to represent persecuted Jews, while simultaneously persecuting Jews who question their authority. Why are you still defending them, traitor Jew? They don't care about innocent civilians and children like Israel does. I thought there was no such thing as an innocent Palestinian. And Israel also kills Palestinian civilians, including children, all the time. So it's a little bit pot kettle, isn't it? That's because they use those civilians and children as protective cover while they're trying to slaughter us. Like the IDF did for years. Were these kids playing on the beach during Protective Edge Hamas shields? Human shields, human shields, human shields. What about the innocent women and children and men killed by Israeli terrorists determined to establish an Israeli state? Why are you still defending Hamas? How is it not obvious that when they do it, it's terrorism, but when we do it, it's self-defense? I'm not defending Hamas. It is terrible and inhumane to strike at civilians, but you have to examine why people get radicalized in the first place. You can and should look at the root causes of horrific behavior without condoning that behavior. The only way to stop their violent resistance is to continue the violent policies that incited and exacerbate their violent resistance. Has this worked for Israel or its big daddy America? Why do self-haters and anti-Semites pick on Israel so much? It's the only democracy in the Middle East. They democratically bomb people. And they give them warnings. It's humane to tell people you're about to blow up their home. You really can't see who's the Goliath. These people are beasts. Bad Jews. Gosh, could not see. They want to wipe us off the face of the earth. Self-defense, we should just wipe them off the face of the earth. Self-defense, they elected Hamas. They're just gonna grow up to be terrorists anyway. You have so much hate in your heart. Kill them all. You're defending Hamas. Human shields, why are you defending Hamas? They give warnings, they give warnings, they give warnings. Hitler should have finished the job on your family. Jew haters. Self-defense, self-defense. You're endorsing mass murder. Let's turn Gaza into a parking lot. These people are savages. Look, you just need to be rational about this. Every democracy has its shortcomings, and Israel is no different. We finally agree. Shut up, you dirty, self-hating, terrorist sympathizing. Wait, the real reason the state of Israel has no right to exist is the same reason no government has a right to exist. The Israeli government's crimes may be staggeringly shocking, brutal, and glaringly hypocritical, but they're also a reflection of all governments. Whether it's democratic Israel abusing people, the American Republic killing people domestically and abroad, the Russian oligarchy doing the same, socialist governments, communist governments, monarchies, theocracies, dictatorships, and everything in between, all states in all of human history and today depend on their monopoly on violence or the threat of it to assert, claim, and secure your obedience to their imagined authority and to fund their regimes. Without organized violence or the threat of it and people who believe in its legitimacy, they can't actually force anyone to do anything. And this includes governments that claim to be representative. Regardless of the type of government, corruption and abuse inevitably occur because the state only exists through theft and violence, the perceived right to steal and kill that none of us actually have. Not the people the state claims to serve and represent, or the people who claim to have authority through the government. If people don't have a moral right to initiate violence, people can't delegate that right to other people claiming to represent them in the form of government. Despite what actual anti-Semites believe, the Israeli government's brutality doesn't occur because it's run by Jews. It occurs because you can't have government without violent authority, which attracts sick people who get off on ruling over and hurting others. This inherent violence allowed communists to kill millions and fascists to slaughter Jews and others deemed a threat. Likewise, Zionist ideology, which is not synonymous with Judaism as a whole, would be toothless without the institution of statism to enforce its objectives. So would any other religious ideology, and belief in government and all its legitimacy, fanaticism, and rituals is a religion in itself where people worship at the altar of violence, authority, and control. Whatever your stance on Israel and Palestine, if you truly oppose violence against innocent people, you must reject the legitimacy of all government, the biggest perpetrator of the worst atrocities in history. There is no mass murderer more prolific than the state, or rather, the people who hallucinated to have legitimate authority and those who believe they're acting righteously with their uniforms, badges, and guns to enact the whims of politicians and government officials who scribble words on paper or make declarations and deem their brutality legal, moral, or both. The vast majority of human relationships are peaceful and voluntary, unlike the inherently non-consensual nature of government. All around the world, every single day, the state aggresses against people while sowing hate, fear, and division. And all around the world, every single day, individual people work together to help each other and make the world go round. And we have so much more in common with each other than we do the ruling class that claims to serve and represent us. In reality, unless you're truly hateful and sick, you probably don't really despise all Palestinians or Arabs or Muslims or Jews or Israelis or anyone else. Those people absolutely do exist and are exponentially more dangerous when given government authority. Regardless, it's more likely that you don't hate any entire demographic, but have simply been taught that the governments and violent organizations acting in their name literally are them. Quote, "We are the government." The truth is that we're all human, and regardless of our faiths or beliefs, we share that humanity, our love for our families and communities, fears for our survival, and hopes for a better present and future. But the only way we're ever going to achieve it is to cast off this belief in violent authority, to believe in ourselves and each other as we recognize our true power, which doesn't come from government elections or bombs or guns. It comes from our ability and choice to break away from our belief in the legitimacy of violent authority and claim our natural born right to be free.